Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The March 6th meeting of the Anne Arundel County Board of Education will now come to order. Please rise for today's invocation, followed by the pledge to the flag. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we begin today's meeting, I'd like to yield to Mrs. Schallheim.
Thank you. As many of you already know, a Severna Park High School student passed away last Friday. I can only imagine the pain his family, friends, and teachers are feeling, and our hearts go out to all of them. May his memory be a blessing. In the wake of this tragic event, our trauma teams mobilized immediately and offered support not only to the family, but were on site first thing Monday morning to assist both students and staff. This work is not easy and often goes overlooked. I applaud their heroic efforts to immediately provide support to our schools in times of need and to continue that support for as long as necessary.
Thank you for those remarks. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and live streamed on the internet. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room, so please make sure you read those if you have not already. Item 2.03 is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Second. Any edits or modifications to the minutes? Seeing none, we'll just approve by consensus. Thank you. Next is item 2.04, which is establishing the agenda order. Would any member like to add anything to the agenda that's not currently printed? Seeing none, the agenda will stand as published. Item 2.05, general recognitions, and today there are none. And that brings us to item 2.06. Then please. Okay. Mrs. Corkadell.
Oh no, I just wanted to share that I had a chance to attend the Southern Alumni Scholarship Foundation's annual meeting, and I just wanted to do an accolade because this is an occasion where the communities all get together, every member of the community from every way, shape, and form, and from the businesses to the local residents, and they have a blast every year. In 5 years, they've raised, I anticipate it to be over $300,000, and so for that, I just wanted to do a shout out, and I just recognized that my recognition was out of order of agenda, Mr. President.
We were going with the flow, so it was.
I was having them out, hence the coffee at there.
It's that Southern High School pride. That's okay.
There you go. Although my kids do attend South River, I do have pride for my folks. So. My apologies, Mr.
You're
President
fine.
and fellow members.
Okay. Item 2.06, Educator of the Month, Mrs. Hummer.
The National Education Association's Read Across America Day is a nationwide reading celebration that takes place annually on March 2nd, Dr. Seuss's birthday. Across the country, thousands of schools, libraries, and community centers participate by bringing together kids, teens, and books to celebrate. And this morning, the Board of Education celebrates Read Across America Day by recognizing a fantastic reading teacher. Kathleen Smith, reading specialist at Fort Smallwood Elementary School, is all about reading. She implements reading initiatives that benefit students, staff, and the Fort Smallwood community. She implements reading intervention groups with Fidelity, demonstrating very enthusiastically how to read, how to understand what is being read, and most importantly, how to really enjoy reading. Every other week, Mrs. Smith leads collaborative planning sessions for each grade level, where she provides real-time data to promote the highest level of differentiated reading instruction. She analyzes the data before each meeting and asks each teacher how to attack these needs by designing strategy groups to promote student understanding of reading standards. Kathleen helps to create the lessons each strategy group will focus on and takes it one step further by taking on a strategy group herself to help support the students and teachers in her building. Teachers at Fort Smallwood benefit from Kathleen's coaching schedule, which is tailored to the individual needs of each teacher and their unique group of students. Bi-weekly, she visits each classroom teacher's guided reading class to coach teachers in refining the implementation of rigorous structures and routines. After each coaching session, she helps each teacher with next steps, whether it be anchor charts, word walls, or to help design lesson plans. In the 4 years since Mrs. Smith assumed the role of reading specialist at Fort Smallwood Elementary School, the school's reading scores have skyrocketed. Standardized test scores and quarterly benchmark reading scores have seen steady increases with her at the helm of the reading initiatives at her school. One of her colleagues stated, "The numbers speak for themselves and the growth is evident." Mrs. Smith is often referred to as the in-house therapist at Fort Smallwood. Her patience, empathy, and kindness go far in a profession where teachers need just as much emotional supports as their students, and she provides it whenever needed. Students light up when Mrs. Smith walks in the classroom. Her energy is magnetic. Kathleen Smith, in a school district where the motto "all means all" takes the forefront, you demonstrate that each day. You believe that every community member, teacher, and student deserves special attention, care, and the opportunity to be an important member of our learning community. And so, for these reasons and more, the Board of Education is honored to recognize you Educator of the Month for March 2019. Congratulations. How did they get you here this morning?
I have 4 e-gate binders here. You're supposed to be looking at e-gate and learning that process. So
there you
if
go.
anyone's interested.
The staff here said she's ready to go with e-gate. She's got her stuff. She's set to go. Now, who all is here?
My family, my husband and 2 children, my administrator and one of my colleagues, and our wonderful reading coordinator and reading team, my cluster contact.
Well, fabulous. Well,
Yeah.
we're very excited. So we have a certificate for you and a bell that you can ring very loudly to bring your
great.
collaborative reading groups
Yes.
of teachers to order,
Oh.
because we need to know that they need that sometimes.
They are equally deserving of this. That's because of them.
Well,
too.
smile. And then stick around and with your family, and we'll take some pictures in just a few minutes out front as well.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item 2.07 is Employee of the Month. Mrs. Corkadell.
Thank you. If anyone who had visited Southern Middle School can attest, the school is very well maintained. From floor to ceiling, the school is spick and span clean. The exterior of the school is pretty any time of year, and the overall appearance adds to a positive school climate, and I may note a positive community climate as well. Today, the board recognizes the employee who is attributable to the appearance of Southern Middle School. Our Employee of the Month for March 2019, Miss Francine Pratt, Chief Night Custodian. Francine! She just punched him. I'm sorry. Francine manages the night custodian crew with flexibility and ease, despite a variety of disruptions that can occur. She knows the schools and the grounds like the back of her own hand. She's highly proficient at managing resources throughout our school. Whenever there is a problem that needs her attention, Francine always goes above and beyond to get the problem resolved. She takes pride in her work, knowing that appearance of the school is her responsibility. She gives teachers and staff the comfort level that if something's missing, broken, or needed, Francine will come to the rescue. When school-wide events are being planned, Francine often has a solution or insight that bears consideration in planning and organizing the event. She is a team player and very dependable. Francine is a friendly face at the end of each school day, and no matter what she's doing, she always takes time to send teachers home with a very big, bright smile. She takes pride in the appearance of Southern Middle School, and the condition of the school reflects that persistence she has for quality and perfection. The floors are so clean and polished that one can slide on them wearing socks. Francine is unfailingly courteous and professional to everyone with whom she interacts. She strives for excellence in all tasks, big and small, and keeps working until things are completed to perfection. She's reliable, friendly, and helpful, and is an excellent role model for her team members as well as the larger school community. She's always willing to lend a hand and always quick to offer a smile. I can personally attest to this. I used Southern Middle School for several events, and not only did she call back before just almost any other school ever did with me, was willing to work there, was willing to come in at 9 p.m. if something went wrong, and made sure that everything was in such precise order. I want to personally thank her for when I worked for the county of the support that she provided me personally and my staff. Francine, your easy-natured, quiet leadership demands respect from everyone and deserves this recognition today. So on behalf of the Board of Education, the students, teachers, and staff of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, we thank you for your commitment to AECPS. We commend you on your great work ethic, and we congratulate you on being selected as Employee of the Month for March 2019. Please come up and be recognized.
My family just came in. My son, my sisters, and her fiance. I'm gonna get all of y'all.
Get the little family
And
too,
yes,
yeah?
my great niece.
Oh, your great niece. How wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 2.08 is Volunteer of the Month. Mrs. Schalheim.
Volunteers are like the roots of a tree. The importance of their work is not always visible, but without them the tree could not flourish. Their efforts are vital to creating the engaging and supportive fertile ground in which our students grow to reach their potential. Today we are here to celebrate a volunteer who works tirelessly to ensure that growth. Mrs. Jamie Tucker. The Board of Education is thrilled to honor you as our March 2019 Volunteer of the Month. From newsletter publisher to community ambassador to co-chair of the Reading is Magic incentive program, Mrs. Tucker plays multiple roles at West Annapolis Elementary School. Every Sunday night, Mrs. Tucker types and sends out a PTA newsletter full of PTA and school news to all families at the school. She is passionate about getting families involved, and she's quick to advertise the ways parents can volunteer to help in their child's classroom. Principal Jennifer Bennett shares Mrs. Tucker has always been on the PTA executive has also been on the PTA executive board for 2 years, and part of their vision is more community involvement and making all parents feel as if they belong to our school and community. They have planned a new student and family social and purchased every new student a West Annapolis Spirit Wear shirt. I could not ask for a more welcoming and inviting community. Getting children excited about reading is also one of Mrs. Tucker's passions. Reading teacher Kelly Fortune reports, I chair our Reading is Magic reading incentive program, and Mrs. Tucker took on the role not only as a volunteer but as my co-chair. Having her support and planning and the actual execution of the program helps support our reading initiative, funding of prizes and recognition, decorating and creating an atmosphere of excitement about literacy. None of these roles are taken on without a great amount of work. PTA President Katie Cook says, While many people recognize Jamie's physical impact on the school with the implementation of spirit sticks and her work on our annual fall festival, I know all of the hours she spends at the computer to make those events come to life. Jamie is the master of detail. She builds spreadsheets, coordinates our school directory, and ensures all communication platforms are accessible to our volunteers. Ms. Cook sums it up by saying, Jamie Tucker is simply put one of the most dedicated volunteers I've ever come across. Mrs. Tucker, you're an asset to both West Annapolis Elementary and the Anne Arundel County Public Schools community. We are truly grateful for your years of service as a volunteer. Because of volunteers like you, we are better together. Would you please come forward? It's with great appreciation that I would like to present the Volunteer of the Month certificate and bell to you.
Thank you. This is for you. Thank you.
And how did they get you here today?
I was told that upcoming PTA presidents we needed to be at the board meeting today. And we haven't even had elections yet. So I'm like, maybe that's going to be me. So,
Who do you have with you today?
Staff volunteers, PTA from West Annapolis. So thank you guys.
Here's your bell.
I'm going to be using this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And to today's honorees, we will be recessing momentarily for some photos in the lobby. Item 2.09, School and Community Highlights. Mrs. Ellis.
I have two highlights to mention today. I attended the 27th Annual Awards Luncheon for a tribute to women of color. That was just a phenomenal event to read the bios of all these amazing young adults and how they were being honored, and to hear their stories of where they're going and what their career goals are. It's just very inspiring, and to hear them speak, it was just a wonderful event. I also attended the County Executive's Budget Town Hall in District 4 at Arundel High School last night. It was wonderful to hear the citizens speaking up for their concerns with the county budget, and there was lots of testimony there for our teachers and for our schools in general, and I'm very excited to see the community being so engaged.
Thank you. Mr. Leib.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer a thank you to Dr. Arlotto for arranging a visit for me to Central Elementary School, Mayo Elementary School, and Cat South. And also extend a personal thank you to Principal Grubel, Fitzgerald, and Rose. It was a tremendous visit, and I'd like to thank the staff, the teachers, and all involved for a very informative and very rewarding time spent in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Schallheim.
Thank you. I also attended a Tribute to Women of Color event, and it was spectacular. Such bright, shining stars in our future, and they're all going to be tremendous in any endeavor that they take on. And it was just an amazing morning. I also had the pleasure, and I'd like to thank Dr. Arlotto for allowing me to accompany him on 4 of the 5 Teacher of the Year visits. That was amazing, and it was amazing to be part of that surprise and to see the joy on their faces. And the most priceless moment, of course, was the reaction of the children's faces to their teacher getting that accolade. And a lot of this, it was amazing, and I really truly appreciate being included in that and participating in that wonderful event. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, I also got to take part in a couple of the visits for the Teacher of the Year finalists, and that's always one of my favorite mornings. I know it's one of Dr. Arlotto's favorite, surprising teachers, and to see the kids' reactions. The 3rd grade class we went into, those kids were so excited for their teacher. They were just bursting, and so that is just always great to see not only to recognize these great teachers, but to see firsthand the impact they're having on their kids and how much it means to the students. I also, Friday, I loved being able to recognize our Educator of the Month as the reading teacher for Read Across America Day. Friday for Read Across America Day, I visited 2 schools, Maryland's Brockbridge Elementary and Monarch Global, and read to 4 different classes from kindergarten through 5th grade. Very different to read from kindergartners to 5th graders. I read the same books. They loved them just as much. I mean, it was great. Everybody loves Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. You have to love that book. So it was a great time, and it was also the first time that I was able to see Brockbridge Elementary since it was totally completed with adding walls. And I just have to say, hats off to our facilities people. It is amazing. It's so different. It's like a different building, and it makes such a difference in the learning environment. And I know that we sometimes get into, oh, it's too expensive for renovations and things like that. It makes a huge difference. It makes a difference in how children can learn and the environment that they're in. And while, of course, I will always wish that it was done while my children were there, I am thrilled for the children now that have that and the teachers that have that. And it's just beautiful. So thank you to facilities for that.
Ms. Urea.
I also had the opportunity to go to the Tribute to Women of Color, and seeing all those future leaders of Anne Arundel County Public Schools students, just going up there and thanking all of the donors for the very generous scholarships. It was just really inspiring because I knew tons of those, plenty of those students there, and just to hear their aspirations and just their gratitude of this scholarship, because college is very expensive. So it was just amazing talking to them about their aspirations and their goals, and hearing how everything they've done in their community is now being rewarded to them, and that allows them to continue with that. So it was very inspiring. And then I also had an amazing opportunity with other CRASC students to go to the kickoff of the new curriculum nights last 2 Wednesdays ago, or last Wednesday, talking about implicit bias in elementary school student books. So that was really interesting, and we are so excited to go through that. And it was just wonderful sitting there learning about it and just to see what's coming. So thank you.
Mrs. Corkadell.
Okay, now at the right moment in time, I just had 2 additions. Very quickly, I was fortunate to also attend the Women of Color scholarship event, and you know, those kids have to get up there and give acknowledgement speeches, and I was just amazed at the level of communication skills that many of them had. It was just outstanding. The MC, I just wanted to call him out because he's a former recipient of the award scholarship, and in all fairness, he's a pastor, so he's a little bit more experienced than the average student, but he kept everybody just laughing, and in the good and spirit of interest of the event itself was outstanding. I did attend the District 7 town hall for the budget that the county executive and Councilwoman Jessica Hare was our hosts. And it's always great to hear from the folks and what they have to say about the budget. And so I thank both the council and the county executive for hosting these in their local districts.
Great. Thank you. Seeing no further lights, we'll move to superintendent's update. Dr. Arlotto.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Just a couple of things, updates for the board and others. Mr. Leib, I certainly want to thank you for making those school visits. I look forward to all of your colleagues getting out into schools and visiting the schools and see all the good work that's going on. I will also, since you mentioned Mr. Rose and Kat South in that visit, I'm going to give your colleagues fair warning that I didn't give you before you went. The media class, each and every time a celebrity of the status of a Board of Education member enters the building, they are immediately ushered into the media, to the multimedia class, where they are filmed reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, which that is then played back in the morning to their morning announcements. And they have a whole library of these, as it turned out, while Mr. Leib was was wonderful to play along, and while he was recording his, I had done one several years ago, and it just so happened that morning they were running mine on television. So I was on the big screen while he was being recorded. So I give you fair warning, you will immediately be ushered in before you can see any of the students, and you'll be required to cite the Pledge of Allegiance for future use. So thank you for playing
pleasure.
along. I do also want to mention, I just want to add quickly, I want to thank you, the board members that attended the event, the Tribute Women of Color Luncheon, Scholarship Luncheon. That was what you didn't hear any of the board members mention, ladies and gentlemen, is that was on a Saturday. They gave up their Saturday to be there, and that speaks volumes to our students and our families that you were there to celebrate them. This was a celebration of our students. So thank you for giving up your Saturday to be there. Let me also mention that there were 34 of our students that were awarded scholarships in one way, one form or another, through 29 sponsors, totaling $43,900 in one morning. And I just think that's wonderful. So thank you for being there. Let me also say that in the past month, our five-star rated schools have been honored on the floor of the Senate through the sponsorship of Senator Bidel. So Central Middle, Magathie River Middle, Severna Park High School, Severna Park Middle, and Chesapeake Science Point, all in the past month, have been honored on the floor of the Senate as being five-star schools. So our hats off to them. That's really wonderful work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And our final item before we break for the recess is item 2.11 CAC report. Mr. Gully.
Good morning, President Gilland, Vice President Uria, board members, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Brandon Gully. I'm the chairperson of the Citizen Advisory Committee. Our past meeting, we had our annual budget presentation. Matt Stansky came in. He did an awesome job of helping us get a sense of what was going on with the budget this year and that sort of thing. I think it's so great to get that information out to the different clusters so that those representatives can communicate that out to the families. Michelle Heim was there as well, so we appreciate your information, your input, and your feedback. We always love when board members join us and can keep us updated on what's going on. We're going to continue to focus on our subcommittee work so we can get that into you guys before the end of the year. Some of the big topics that came up and that we'll continue to talk about, I'm sure, and spend time on was just communication channels down to the parents. So what are some different ways that we can make sure that all the information is getting out to the parents in the clusters? And also a lot of discussion on the global community citizenship course, which we'll have a presenter on in our April meeting. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gully. And at this time, we'll take a short recess for the photos. Thank you.
Great.
If we want to say X, Y, and Y, you know what I mean? So, anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keeping it warm.
Yep. Thank you very much. We will now move to the public comment portion of today's meeting. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during this public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. A tone will sound when time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. And today we have one card for public comment, and Russell Leone.
Good morning, President Gilliland, Vice President Urea, and Dr. Arlotto. My name is Russell Leone, and I'm the president of the Teachers Association. And this morning, I just wanted to talk about the March for Our Schools that's happening on Monday evening. There will be thousands of educators converging in Annapolis from across the state to urge our legislators on the state level to increase funding for our schools. This is really important to us because it's best for our students. We're pushing for more counselors, psychologists, to meet the needs of our mental health services. We're pushing for more planning time for our teachers so that they can better prepare for our students in the classroom. And that does take money. And so we're asking our state legislators to put more education funding so it can come back to us here in Anne Arundel County. So I urge all of you to join us in Annapolis. The rally starts at 6 p.m. and it is right down Royal Boulevard. You're not going to be able to miss us. We're going to have thousands of educators and educator friends wearing red. Please join us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leone. We'll now move to the departmental reports. Item 4.01, Safety and Security Report.
Good morning, President Gillen, Vice President Urea, and members of the Board of Education and Dr. Arlotto. For the record, I am Monique Jackson, Deputy Superintendent for Student and School Support. I am providing a monthly update on security as requested. Our students are very important partners, and as such, Mr. Batten, the Supervisor of School Security, was a guest at the February Superintendent's Teen Advisory Meeting discussing drills. Feedback from the group will be considered as we develop our drill schedule for next school year. He continues to work with school-based personnel to ensure that state and system-mandated drills are implemented with fidelity. And finally, he continues to collaborate with all parties on vestibule upgrades. Thank you for this opportunity, and with that, I am open to any questions you may have.
Thank you. We'll move to board questions and comments. First, Ms. Sanchwein.
Good morning.
Yes, good
Thank you
morning.
for that awesome report.
Thank you.
I have a question about, there is within the county police department some dedicated youth programs and a youth team that goes out into the community. Are we engaging with them at all, or do we engage with them in any kind of way, or are there plans to start engaging with them?
We do. I can get you some specific answers in the next update, if that's okay with you. I know that, for example, the SROs do take teams of students to offer them experiences, especially in our high needs areas. And so we will get some more specific information to you.
I think we could add, next month we could talk about some of the DARE, as we've developed the DARE programs in some of our middle schools.
Yes, sir.
In conjunction with the police department.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments? Mr. Urea.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson. And I know at the last team advisory, right after everybody left, there was great feedback, and everybody was like so amazed with the work that you guys do. So thank you very much for talking about that at the last meeting.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Thank you. Any public comment? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now move to item 4.02, which is the bullying prevention report.
Good morning, President Gilman, Vice President Urea, members of the board, and Dr. Arlotto. For the record, I am Sally Egan, Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, and I am joined this morning by Ms. Shirley Jackson Avery, Coordinator of School Counseling, for the purpose of providing a monthly update on bullying as requested. As Ms. Monique Jackson, Deputy Superintendent, indicated in February, my report will be an overview of how our elementary counseling curriculum supports anti-bullying. Counselors provide counseling lessons at the elementary level on a monthly basis. Our first quarter topics include bullying prevention, teasing and harassment, as well as positive peer relationships. Counseling lessons are the most age-appropriate way to combat bullying at the elementary level. For example, a 5th grade lesson on cyberbullying includes several modes of learning, such as reading, writing, and visualization. In addition, schools engage in periodic reviews of the Code of Conduct campaigns, such as Unity Day in October, Kindness Awareness, and Red Ribbon Week No Name Calling. We continue to emphasize character education, utilizing monthly themes. Counselors work with small groups as needed to promote social skills as needed. In partnership with classroom and reading teachers, the school counselor addresses themes such as bullying, empathy, and diversity through books such as Each Kindness and One. The practices of AACPS are consistent with the National School Counseling Mindset and Behavior Standards. Last month, we highlighted middle school. Next month, we will highlight bullying prevention at the high school level. Thank you.
Ms. Sanchwein.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for that report. Could you please tell me what that book, the name of that book was again, please?
Each Kindness, and the other one is One.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then I had a follow-up.
Sure.
I would like to make a motion, not directly to you all, but I'm still concerned with the bullying reporting. So I would like to make a motion that we introduce a pilot of the Texas Stop It program in our middle schools, at least 3 of our middle schools. I think based on the financials that I got, it would have a budget impact, but of less than $10,000. So I'm making that as a motion.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We'll open up to discussion. Dr. Arlano.
Sure. If I could add, Ms. Antwi, I know you and I have had a conversation about this on an earlier occasion. One of the things that we have concerns about implementing yet another, this would be a third way of reporting bullying and other incidents, is the confusion it could cause for our students and our parents and our community. We have had a 24/7 reporting mechanism and a third-party vendor that helps us vet those. They go through our Office of Safety and Security, and we've had that in Anne Arundel County for a number of years. The state, through the governor and his and legislation that passed a year ago to implement a new Maryland Safe Schools reporting mechanism, another hotline, that has also been implemented. So now we have two that we in Anne Arundel County are using. I've got a concern about adding yet a third and confusing our students and our parents and community members about which one to report and how we can best monitor those. We are sort of taking the lead on the state because the governor's law, and I'm part of the advisory board for the state on these issues, about what will be the one mechanism. So many of the school systems have two mechanisms now because they had one earlier. Now with the governor's law a year ago, we now have a second, and we're sort of waiting for that one to get finally teased out, and I think that's going to be the rule. That's going to be the mechanism that they want all schools to be reporting, because that data is being collected at the state level and monitored at the state level through the Maryland Center of School Safety.
Going to responding.
So thank you for that, Dr. Arlano, and I, out of sincere respect, we shared exchange on that, and I understood that. I am not saying that we should dismiss what the state is going with. I'm saying that we introduce another mechanism to align with how the students communicate. And right now, what was reported previously was that the utilization of those mechanisms that we currently have were underutilized in comparison to the reports that we're receiving. So a program like Text to Stop It, which is also state supported, would support the students also anonymously reporting and then the time and the results. I'm introducing the pilot instead of the overarching we adopted to see how we can get metrics in case we come up with maybe even a hybrid of both, where we can introduce it so that we can help students to communicate more effectively about what may be going on with them.
Okay, Mrs. Ellis.
I'm definitely very intrigued by what I've learned about the text to stop mechanism. And I hesitate to use that word because I don't know if there are other similar programs, so I don't know if we should tie ourselves to any one particular vendor. But I can tell you, having a presence on social media, I am aware that there is still some sort of breakdown between the reporting and the resolution of bullying incidents in our school system. And again, that's not pointing to any one particular person or area that's at fault. It could be within at the central office. It could be at the administration in the school, or it could be in improper use by families and students reporting. But somewhere along the way, we still have a breakdown that we need to address. Data does show the effectiveness of this texting mechanism, and that it increases resolution and satisfaction among the students. And we know that texting is a form of communication that students, it's the form of communication they use the most. So it makes sense that it would help them be more engaged and feel more empowered to have a voice and speak up. So I am definitely interested in pursuing this and seeing where we can go with this, and I would say a pilot is a good way to start.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Shawheim.
To respond to the comments that Dr. Arlato made regarding use of the outside vendor, I'm wondering if through using existing channels, right, so the existing vendor, if there would be a way to expand the services they provide to allow for a texting option. So if that's where kids are at, it doesn't have to be called Text to Stop It or any of the others, but I'm wondering if they've explored that, because if we want to meet students where they are, and if we know that where they are is liking to text more than picking up the phone and calling, then that could be a reasonable option to avoid confusion, working with another party, all of those sorts of things.
Absolutely. May I? Oh, thank you. These pieces are sort of fluid when it comes to, thank you, Ms. Schallheim. Let me start with our current vendor. We are leaving up because that's the number that's most widely known and that's out there. And so until the governor's initiative really takes hold and it is completely developed through, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, we are not going to bring ours down. Eventually, our plan is to take down ours and go with what the state is recommending. So there is a sub-cabinet of secretary-level positions that the governor has appointed to advise him. There is also a Maryland Center for School Safety Sub-Cabinet Advisory Board, also appointed by the governor, that is advising him on these issues. And so his Safe Schools Maryland has an app that students can access and text in information as they wish. And the text feature is going to be enhanced over time. And so he has appointed people with the Maryland Center for School Safety, MEMA, and some others that are working on these issues. And so, again, I'm going back to what I said earlier. I'm a little concerned about getting ahead of what the state may be requiring us to do in 6 months or a year and a half. I am part of that advisory that meets monthly. And these are conversations that we're having, the Maryland School Safety, Maryland Center for School Safety, MEMA, the Maryland Association of Chiefs of Police, the Maryland Association of Sheriffs. It's a coordinated effort. So I can see this app that's currently available through the state being enhanced through more text-friendly. It is a little clunky. It's accessible. I have it on my phone now. I would say it's a little clunky in terms of how students communicate, but that's well known, and they are working on these issues.
So then can I offer a friendly suggestion to go on top of that? So if the app already exists in some form or another, would it be worth putting that into a school or two to get feedback on how, if the user is going to ultimately be the student, then they should have a seat at the table with how they feel all that technology is working. Yep. Does it have the right features? Is it asking the right questions in the right way? Yada yada. So can we, as a compromise from going to a different vendor to going through existing channels that are only going to get more expanded over time, could we throw that out to a school or two and say, hey, or not even as a reporting mechanism yet, but as a part of a focus group to get their feedback on how that app is set up and what they would like to see should that one day be the standard?
If I understand what you're saying, Ms. Schallheim, the state is collecting data, and there on the advisory, there is a student from Baltimore County that was appointed by the governor that sits at the table with all the others, the sheriffs and police chiefs and others. And so he is providing input on behalf of students. That's the way it was designed by the governor. And the app is available now. Students may it's live. It's not just something I'm carrying on my phone. I download it from the App Store. It's live across the state of Maryland. It's in use now.
Well, I'm sure that some school systems have situations that are unique to others. We all know this. Not one size does not always fit all, and so, in my mind, gaining more feedback from more students rather than relying on a singular student's perspective could be helpful.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Urea and then Mrs. Hummer.
So, Ms. Shaham, I think I can answer your question as well. My mic's off. So, last year when this was launched at MEMA, the governor invited the student councils, so like Krask, and ones from different counties, to the launch off day. And he invited the presidents as well as the state student member of the Board of Education, and other county leaders, student leaders, on a panel. So I was on that panel. And he was asking us questions with his team for feedback on this app. Okay. Yeah, so as soon as it launched, calls were and texts were immediately coming in. So he was collecting that student data, and he also asked each regional student council to continue to collect data from what students are talking about and continue to bring it to him. And I know Lucas, the student that is serving, like Dr. Olato said, and he is continuously in contact with the regional student reps to get that feedback and bring it to the governor and the council as well. So there's a ton of student feedback. And what's good about this, and one of the main reasons that Governor Hogan told us that he started this was the app feature and was the texting and the anonymous, which our local one on every student ID on the back is just a calling one. So it's like the double feature. Yeah.
Wonderful. So if it's live, then are students able to access that and use that now then to report? How is that being received?
It was live as of last year.
No, yeah. I know, but if an Anne Arundel County Public School student were to use that app to report an incident, where would that information then travel to? To y'all, or?
The information goes to the state. And then the state, based on the report, decides, I say state, I think it's MEMA. It goes to MEMA. They are then filtering through the information and getting in contact with the local. So each local has a director of safety and security. Mr. Doyle Batten is ours. And so he would then get a call from the state and say, we've gotten a report of X, Y, or Z. And then they would give it to us for us to then investigate, take over, call local law enforcement. It depends on the level that's being reported. It could go to law enforcement first if it rose to that, and then they would contact us, but that's for MEMA to sift out. But it goes to the state brings it to us.
And are we publicizing that app anywhere now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
And the student regional government was asked to do that as well, as publicize that. And we did do an event, and we had it public and known to the students as well. Yes.
Okay. Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, well, many of my questions were answered with that. I totally agree that we need to get to where the students are so that they're most apt to do there. But I believe that this app that the governor is promoting and that is backing with state funding and the whole bit is trying to do that, and I think it will get better with time. I'm glad to hear that Dr. Arlato serves on that committee, so he can share that feedback back, and we can make it even more user friendly as we go forward. So I'm in support of continuing forward with what the governor is promoting.
Mrs. Corkadell.
I'll mirror a little bit of that. My experience with technology has always been that we need to make sure that we have substantiating research on it. I would hesitate to have a budget implication without a budget dollar or the data background, the research done on the alternatives at this time. But I do want to applaud my fellow member, Ms. Antwine, for wanting to take an initiative, because we do have an urgent problem that has an urgent need. I think logistically, I'm inclined to decline, given the testimony that was presented by the superintendent's staff at this time. But I think we could definitely, at the very least, add to it progress on that state portal into this report as a standard. Since this is new information, I'd like to hear more about it, because if it's not going to meet our need, then we want to prepare for that for next year's budget then, to include it in there. And that was...
Okay, thank you. We've got Ms. Antwine and then Ms. Ellis.
So again, I am all about what the governor supports, which this particular program he supported up, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. So some of the features may be in the app that you guys are referring to. With the pilot program, if the current app is live and existing, I would like to know how it's being utilized within our system, how many of our students, the reporting data on that currently, and while the state is making decisions, while the state is putting forth money, there are still students who are being victimized. I believe we need something immediately that we can put our hands on and be in direct control of as well. And it is important that we get something that is not only supported and endorsed by the governor, but something that's fully utilized elsewhere, so that we can get known metrics and gathered metrics for our schools as well. I'm advocating for the middle schools because, as reported before, the middle schools are funny places when it comes to bullying, and so that we can move forward from there. Nothing keeps us from taking other initiatives. It's based on the numbers and research that I have done. It's still under the $10,000 mark, which I understood was significant in terms of competition, and it will certainly give the students some means of reporting beyond what we have now.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis.
I'm comfortable with supporting where we're headed with the state if we're going to end up with an app that is truly user-friendly for the students. But I do want to bring up a couple things about the other vendor that was initially mentioned. They do have a lot of data and got support from the state, got approval to use in our schools. It just didn't come with the funding for us to purchase that. But so I do think there is more information to gather there. There is data available. The one feature of that app that I'm concerned about is I believe it's more conversational. Like when a student makes texts the number, then they get a response, and I don't know if that's a counselor, but there's someone who helps them through. In other words, they're not just submitting a report through this app. It's more like a warm line. They're contacting a person who responds to them, and they have a conversation. So that piece of it is the part that I'm concerned about, because that is something that I think would be very effective for the students, that I'm not sure exists with the state app. Maybe it does, I don't know. But if it's just them sending a text in order to file a report, and then it goes through all these channels, that's not quite the same service as what the text to stop does, which is the student actually contacts a person and has a conversation.
Our counselors do follow up when they get a text from or information from the Office of School Security.
Do you know the
timeline? So we do
timeline?
follow up. Oh, as soon as we get the text, then the counselor would follow up.
Thanks.
Ms. Schalheim and then Mr. Rea.
So back to the existing vendor and the phone number that is known and used and is out there. And this is just a question, and I still have records at home, so bear with me. So can that phone number also be used as a number to text to? Is there any capability there? So if a phone number is known, if a person doesn't want to make a call, is there any technology that they could text to that number instead, trying to meet the students where they need? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if that's even possible. I don't
have
where
the
ideas
answer.
come from, they just appear.
I think the answer is no. I think it's landline to landline.
Okay.
I think our vendor's in Atlanta, Georgia. So I think it's a landline, but I certainly can ask. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that this is a thing, but thank you for asking. Yes.
Okay, Mr. Rea.
Ms. Ellis, so to answer your question, because I'm just trying to help clarify some things with, so with your regards, were you asking about the warm line with the state one?
I guess I'm comparing the two. I know what I've learned about.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. I know what I've learned about the vendor that was proposed at the beginning of the motion, and I know how that works. I guess I'm not clear on the state. If a student texts, hey, I'm having this problem, is there a person that live gets back to them and has a conversation with them?
So from my understanding, when I went and Krask's research and everything, with the work that we've done is it's like multi-pronged. So you can call the number MD2 stop, and they showed us a room. where they have proctors. It's 24/7 line that you can have a conversation with somebody and they can help you, similar to other report lines, or you can report through them, or you can also text the number, or you can also, through the app that is downloaded, make an anonymous report for yourself or for somebody else, which is then, like Ms. Egan and Dr. Alado said, reported to the authorities that they need, because they want you. The point of it, Governor Hogan said, was to get you or your friend or whoever you thought needed the support services that they needed within a timely manner.
Right. I'm just taking what I know about how teens and preteens communicate, and they're often not comfortable picking up a phone and having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But they do want to have a conversation by text.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure there's a conversational piece to it, because that helps them, I think, a lot.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah. And I mean, I know one thing too is that, like you said, the calling and the texting and stuff, just from my perspective, it's like they really want the face conversation too. So just those services, yeah. Oh, can I call the question as well? Or no?
You
want to say what?
You will proceed. You can make one. Yeah.
You can say
that interrupts.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a point of order. I do not believe it's within our purview, based on procurement, to specify in a motion a specific vendor. I would offer a friendly amendment to establish a definition of parameters in order for the motion to be able to be carried forward. As it stands right now, I do not believe it would be appropriate to vote on.
Okay. I'm going to ask the maker of, just so we can avoid a bunch of procedural stuff, the maker of the motion, Ms. Antoine, if she would concur with what Ms. Corcadell just raised.
So, and that was the main reason for the button being pressed. I when I introduced this at the last meeting, I emphasized that we need something in addition to what we have. Not specifically a vendor, but something that is readily available now to our students. I understand that the state app is being developed. If it can be operational in the 3 middle schools, so we can get more definite metrics and build and make better decisions on how to manage bullying in our schools, I agree to that. So the motion now is amended to say that we introduce a pilot in 3 of our middle schools, in addition to the bullying reporting mechanisms that we have, some tool that will allow students to text and converse more immediately in line with how they communicate today. And my recommendation is that we do it in 3 of the middle schools because of the increased bullying in middle schools.
Okay, so that motion has been revised to accommodate the point of order. Are you?
I will second that. That satisfies that. I want to make
Awesome.
sure.
I think it's been sufficiently addressed. Okay, and I appreciate that, Ms. Antoine. We've got some additional lights, but there was a motion to call the question, and then her point of order trumped that. So, you keeping your motion to call the question?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll do a quick yay and nay on calling the question. And I'm sorry, I should have invited you to be seated. I apologize for that. All those in favor of ending debate say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We now have a vote, Mrs. Connolly, on Ms. Antoine's motion.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Nay.
Nay.
Aye.
No.
That motion has 4 in the positive, 5 in the negative, 4, 5, motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay, thank you. For a follow-up, Mrs. Ellis.
Could we get some sort of a report and or demonstration on the app that currently exists, and find a way to, I guess I would like to have input and provide input on what our concerns are as they develop this technology.
By the way.
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes, we can. And I don't know, somebody here do that, or would we need a state?
We'll work on something. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
You don't need
So-
to vote on something like that.
Yep.
We'll
No,
provide that.
no, I'm not, we're not calling a vote on that.
Some folks, and we'll get you some
Okay.
demonstration and discussion on that.
Got it. All right, thank you. Ms. Antoine.
So, in addition to that, earlier I requested information on the app as well that Ms. Ellis just requested. But in addition to that, could we have a report on the turnaround time, since it does go through the state and then to us and then some action being taken? Specifically, how long it takes from the time a student makes this report to the time action is taken by the school system.
Okay, so
I just, it's, I'm not sure how to get all that data. What I can tell you is it's instant. And it all depends on the level of reporting, right? So if it's a call regarding suicide, somebody's getting on the phone immediately at that app site. And if not, then they're bringing somebody in to talk with that student immediately. If it's a report about a possible something happening at the school, the next morning, the next day, the next week, that report is made to us, and the school systems are working on it immediately. We're talking with the local law enforcement. We'll have extra officers in the building. It could be a report that a student might bring a weapon to school, and we're sending the police in the middle of the night to the house to check for weapons and talking with the parent and the student. So I say it's hard to get that data because it all depends on what's reported, the time of day, and during the week when it's reported. But I can tell you it's instant. It is the turnaround when it gets to the school system. The school systems are on it immediately. We are on it immediately.
No, I don't doubt that we don't let it linger. In terms of the logistics in it, though, understanding the state, because of so many entities between our child saying this happened to me or this is happening to me, we need to understand what that looks like in terms of turnaround. And so if you have a report, for example, then it will show the date of the report, when it was reported, date, time stamp, something, so that when you all bring it back to us in a month, we'll have a better idea of how that's working in our system, especially the turnaround.
Okay. Any further questions or comments on the bullying prevention report? And we'll work on the follow-ups that have been asked by various members, and at least tee that up currently for next month's bullying prevention report, if that's okay. And if there's anything that can be shared in or during the interim, certainly we'll accept that as well. Thank you. Item 4.03 is the diversity and inclusion report.
Good morning, President Gilliland, Vice President Urea, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. For the record, I am Maisha Gillens, Executive Director of Equity and Accelerated Student Achievement, and I am providing my update on diversity and inclusion. On February 15th, I met with several Pasadena residents of the Anne Arundel County Parent Coalition to debrief the January 30th community meeting titled All Means All, Communities Cultivating Acceptance and Inclusion at Chesapeake Bay Middle School. Some of the next steps discussed were holding a community event before the end of the school year, creating more opportunities like their signature Cougar Walk, where seniors greet elementary students, and in looking ahead for next year, hold more community activities that focus on team building and empathy. Additional actions that will be explored based on the feedback will also be hosting a coming to the table meeting, providing information to families on best practices for talking to their children about diversity and inclusion, and implement more Unity Day activities throughout the school year. Logistics are currently being worked out for garnering student voice. This is being done in collaboration with Kathy Rockefeller, School Climate Specialist from the Office of Student Services. Last month, I briefly spoke about the 4 early dismissal days designed to promote diversity and inclusion through systemic professional development. Schools are expected to conduct 3 hours of professional development because every year brings with it the opportunity for new beginnings, the chance to create from the outset exciting avenues to help every single child achieve his or her full potential. That all starts with relationships between students, staff, our communities, as emphasized in our strategic plan. In an effort to help foster those relationships, Dr. Arlotto has tasked schools with making a conscious effort to help students and staff, not just teachers, but all staff, better understand each other. The goal, of course, is to create a more accepting, quality school and learning environment for everyone. Therefore, the first hour of the early dismissal is devoted to activities that foster positive relationships. The last 2 hours are devoted to a professional development module that has been chosen by the school team. The school team chooses a professional development module that appropriately addresses what the school's data says by student group in a specific area such as attendance, disproportionality in discipline, or academic achievement. All schools were mandated to deliver the implicit bias module during the month of October or December. For the remaining 3 early dismissal days, schools selected from the following professional development modules: Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, Parts 1 and 2. Implicit Bias, Part 2, Implicit Bias and the Curriculum, Equitable Practices in the Teaching and Learning Cycle, Opportunity to Learn, Strategies for Creating a Trauma-Sensitive Classroom, Parts 1 and 2, and Strategies for the Strategic Plan, All Means All. A survey will be administered to school-based and central office staff to measure the impact the modules have had on teacher behaviors and student outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gillens. We've got a couple of board questions. Ms. Anchwine.
Dr. Gillens, that is incredibly impressive.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. I want to shift a little bit. I have been approached by PFLAG, and I was wondering within the school system if we are working with PFLAG or organizations similar to PFLAG.
I don't know the answer right off the top of my head. I will have to get back with a response.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Shaheen.
Thank you for your wonderful report. It was very informative. And because it was so informative, I struggled to keep up writing notes. So can you send that to us so we have the list of all the various menu options for the professional development days? Thank you so much, because I'm never going to be able to read what I wrote later. Thank you so much. No, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Ellis.
I too want to thank you for a fabulous report. I made a note to ask, particularly today, what kind of activities are evolving as a result of the community evening. So I was delighted that that's what you started with. Excuse me. So my only follow-up to that is, do we have any plans in other communities at this point in time, or do you know what's coming up to expand this effort in other clusters?
Good question. My response now is early conversations as to now where, what do we have data to support, which community, our communities requesting. So right now, very early on in conversations as to, before the school year ends, which community next. And it probably will look different. Because it has to be dependent upon.
I assume that it would.
Yes.
And I would also, yes, I think we need to be very sensitive to addressing the areas where we see the greatest need, but I think every community can benefit from this, so I do hope to see this traveling around.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Urea.
Thank you, Dr. Gillens. I want to echo what a couple other board members said. It was very informative, and thank you, just the wonderful work that you're doing. And I just specifically want to say I'm extremely excited to hear about the community activities that are planned. I also had a question. You said Unity Day activities. What activities were you guys thinking was particular to Unity Day?
Certainly. So when we did Unity Day this year, it was on a designated date.
Yeah.
So there is an organization, but bully prevention organization, that has an actual site with tons of activities. So that day we do have footage as to how schools celebrated. So, and to give you an example, so for an elementary schools, they may have done a unity tray or handprints around the school to show how they're going to take ownership of having celebrating diversity and inclusion. So that's a small example. High schools may have had pledges posted. But we do have a resource to go to say what's feasible, what's reasonable to expand this throughout the school year. So hopefully I've answered your question as to what some of those activities could look like. We haven't fleshed that out to come up with a blueprint for next year. But there is definitely a resource for us to use to create a blueprint for next year.
Yeah. And so like this year, Unity Day was school system wide.
Right.
Would those activities just be for this cluster or school system wide as well?
Good question.
Thanks.
I will.
Oh, you don't? Oh, okay.
I don't have the answer to that question yet.
No worries. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you.
Awesome. There are currently no other board questions or comments. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Gillens.
Thank you.
We now move to item 4.04, which is the transportation report. I've got somebody on my team. You met her, but you're not going to remember her. She got her PhD in her dissertation has something to do with how the brain works. Knowing that means, but that's before all the bias stuff. And she talks about bias. But when you do a PD event or whatever, you need somebody.
So thank you. For the record, I'm Alex Sheknovich, Chief Operating Officer, here to present item 4.04, which is an information item regarding transportation. And specifically at the last meeting, we were tasked with creating a structure or a shelf or a request for proposal for a transportation consultant to come in and analyze the transportation division. A copy of a skeleton or succinct version of an RFP should have been provided to the members. Let me begin by, this is not what a full proposal would look like. Our RFPs typically range in the 40-plus page zone, so should or if this RFP ever be put out on a street, I can guarantee you it will be north of 40-plus pages. But again, to save some time and save a couple trees, we shrunk it down to the more pertinent elements. Essentially, again, in the interest of time here this morning, maybe we can just focus on the scope of work, because I believe that likely will be the most interest. It begins on page 4 and continues on to page 5 of the exhibit. Essentially, AACPS would be contracting for all labor, supervision, materials, and equipment necessary to provide professional transportation consulting services in accordance with the attached terms, conditions, specifications, etc. And if you go over to page 5 of the exhibit, you have the intention would be then for the data and recommendations provided by this study to be utilized by AACPS to develop an action plan designed to optimize effective practices, facilities, and structures for providing safe and efficient public school transportation services. The transportation consulting firm would provide, amongst various items, a complete written report, which must include a minimum detailed analysis of and costing for specific recommendations regarding the following. And I believe this is likely of most interest. So I'll go through each of them in detail. Item 1. The effectiveness and efficient use of current AACPS transportation program, including organizational structures, policies and procedures, contractual services, computerization, automation, and software level utilization, communication systems, facilities, and equipment. Item 2. Current methodologies utilized for daily school bus routing, special education routes, non-public school routes, field trips, athletic trips, and other co-curricular activities with recommendations for developing more efficient and effective routing procedures and bus routes. Scope item number 3, current operational and capital costs with identification of potential fiscal saving opportunities or recommended enhancements while maintaining optimal and safe public school transportation services. The next scope item would be a review of and recommended enhancements for AACPS owned or leased facilities used for transportation administration, operations, training, and bus storage, fueling, and repairs. The next item would be current and recommended automation and data management tools utilized for bus routing, contractor payments, reporting requirements, data retention requirements, as well as the use of data to measure program efficacy. We'd also be requesting staffing, inclusive of professional support and contractual, be reviewed, items such as organizational structures, resources, qualifications, utilization, compensation, and training/professional development needs. We'd request a review of current practices for recruiting, training, and compensating both AACPS employed as well as contractor employed school bus drivers and bus aides, with recommendations for addressing the current shortage of qualified public school bus drivers and bus aides. We'd be asking the consultant to take a look at procedures used and opportunities for enhanced communications with schools, contractors, bus drivers, aides, staff, parents, students, and other stakeholders regarding transportation services. We'd ask the transportation consultant to assist the AACPS Transportation Department with optimizing the utilization, data population, and output generation of its present computerized automated transportation routing and accounts payable systems. We'd ask that they produce for us recommendations and costs associated with changes to school start and dismissal time scenarios, essentially to compress said times to allow for a later start of those schools with the earliest start times and an earlier completion for those schools with the latest dismissal times. Furthermore, to develop, analyze, and cost out various optimization models to assist AACPS in investigating scenarios, investigating compressing school start and dismissal times, essentially determining the impact and cost of various scenarios on the AACPS Transportation Department and associated school operations. And finally, to examine opportunities to cost effectively shorten the duration of the longest bus route run times where possible and or practicable. And finally, a comparison of AACPS transportation programs and expenditure data with similar Maryland public school districts, including cost per pupil transported, cost per mile, et cetera, as well as professional support and bus driver/aide, both AACPS employed and contractor employed, salary schedules. So we believe this would be a good starting point. We certainly would welcome the board's opportunity. I'm sure many more items could be added to this or possibly detracted from. Again, this brief 8-page synopsis would be fully flushed out and eventually let in the form of a fully vetted RFP. With that, we'll turn it over to the board for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sheknovich. And we do have a couple of lights. Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Sheknovich. I feel after, this is the first time my eyes have seen this just moments ago, but I do feel like we're on a good track in capturing what it is we're looking for.
And
so
again,
I appreciate that.
We'd welcome, this is a starting point as indicated, so we'd appreciate you and your colleagues taking some time looking at it and then
Yes.
providing feedback back to us.
I do have a question with the data that was provided to us as far as, I guess, where Anne Arundel County ranks in terms of spending on per student, I guess, per pupil on transportation. Is that what this?
Well, that's one of the requests that
I'm so sorry. That was not.
That was
never mind.
not
That's
provided
coming
by
later. That was not.
staff.
I will not ask you about that. I'm very sorry.
I'm a little confused now. What are you
I had
asking
a
me
piece
about?
of
'Cause
paper here along with the RFP, and I thought that was provided by
let me
you,
just
and I'm
say,
sorry.
they
provided another piece of
Yep.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with your.
Well, it
Never
didn't
mind.
come from me.
we were given them at the same time, so that's I think
Yeah, I
what created
apologize.
some confusion. That's no problem. Were you any other comments? You're good.
No,
okay.
I'm good for now.
Mrs. Schallheim.
I want to thank you for this. This is a wonderful start, and I'm excited to see it written down on paper in front of us all, for us hopefully to adopt. So I know there's some other questions, but after which I'm going to make a motion. Should I do that now? Maybe I'll do that now. I'm going to move that we take a couple weeks and digest this, make sure that it includes like all the stuff we want it to. And so I move that this go back on the agenda for next meeting, to also allow for more public testimony and hopefully for, as an action item, to adopt at that time pending changes, edits, deletions, additions to this document. That's my motion.
Second.
I mean, and certainly, we've got a motion, there's a second, but I mean, I don't know that we need a motion to put this on the agenda.
But I definitely want this to go on the, all right.
Okay, I mean, we can.
Still learning the
No, but I mean.
procedural parliamentary mumbo jumbo. So anyway, so I think you know what I want, and
Yeah,
so I
if
expect it to.
Yeah, if it's just, for an agenda item, that's no problem.
As an action item, we all take some time to make sure this is what we want. So I withdraw.
Okay.
Previous said motion. All right.
So we've got, trying to remember the order here. I'm sorry, I didn't ask anything else that you.
No, I'm grateful that this is
Okay.
moving forward. Yes.
And so Mrs. Corkadal, then Ms. Anschwein.
But a quick question. First off, thank you very much. This is what I envisioned of being productive for everybody. My question is, so when I look down the pipeline of our capital budget and our facilities needs, we're going to be bringing on a few new schools over the next 10, 15 years. It would be helpful, and I don't know if that would be part of the scope or not, on my quick read, to identify if we could have that opportunity to at least vet Crofton's bringing on that new high school as it relates to that, if there's any efficiencies of ways that we can take that, given that we've not opened up a new school in a long time, to take this moment so that we can, moving forward, take advantage of the data for your staff to include that as part of the scope. Is that something appropriate? Or
We can certainly contemplate that. My initial reaction to that is it's a little premature in that obviously we haven't defined a boundary yet. The second thing is during the implementation phase of Crofton, there's going to be 3 full years where we're going to be double running. Actually, our transportation costs are going to explode, not go down, because we'll be servicing South River and Arundel while servicing Crofton simultaneously. And then should the grandfathering provision pass, that will create 8 years of associated costs. Potentially a youngster in pre-kindergarten, should they live in the right zone, we may be double busing a court for as many as 8 years. So I think until some of those questions are resolved, it may be a little premature. I think certainly after the full implementation, I mean, once Crofton is fully stood up and we're done the phase in and everybody is essentially where they belong, then absolutely it would be opportune then. I'm not sure if we'd be in a position today to provide somebody with all of the data yet that they needed to do that kind of analysis. That's just my initial impressions right now.
Okay, I was actually speaking to the process to based on our existing system to make sure that we're approaching it in the most efficient manner.
And that would be appropriate.
That is what I'm referring
Okay.
to, because I know, we're gonna be needing to revisit that specific thing, but I was just wanting to make sure that we're well prepared to launch the schools.
Right.
And if there's opportunities of efficiency that we can create now or start to work towards, recognizing how many new high schools and elementary schools that we're going to be facing with.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, obviously, I think, again, everybody's just seeing this for the first time today. It'll probably be most effective or efficient if, the board, individually, compile their observations or questions concerned, additional, scoping elements, et cetera, and could funnel those through, through the board's executive assistant, and then staff and myself would compile those and bring back a more finished product for the board to look at.
Well, thank you very much,
but yes,
sir.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms. Antoine and then Mr. Leib.
So, this is awesome. When we introduced it I think about a month ago now, right?
Yeah.
I would not have envisioned this. You all always do great work, and I'll certainly take it and take a look at it. In doing this, I wanted to understand the personnel piece when we go into how we account in terms of dollars when we go into hiring such vendors that do this kind of assessment, please.
Well, I'm not sure your question. I mean, the vendor would be providing the personnel, and they would be, coming into our home and living with us and
right.
speaking to our staff and going through our records and working with our systems. I mean, there will be a lot of communication and data exchange. So obviously, whatever they ask for, we would have to provide, and we'd fully cooperate with them. We wouldn't be looking for additional in-house resources to do that. I mean, the contractor will be providing all those labor hours.
That is exactly where I was going with that. I was also wondering, too, whomever is eventually, whatever vendor eventually takes it on, they'll have to be cleared through our system in order to, engage with the buses and all that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said,
okay.
This skinny 8-page thing would wind up being a 40-something page thing.
Okay.
And they would have to go through everything from screenings to confidentiality agreements. If they needed access to Fort Meade, they would have to go through the DOD screening process, et cetera. So all of that is flushed out in a more robust standard RFP template that we issue to the public.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Leib.
Yes, Mr. Zach, how deep do you believe the bench is for firms that would have the depth and broadness and the qualifications to conduct this sort of examination and review?
Quite honestly, sir, I've not researched that. I mean, we were focused on developing a scoping tool.
Yeah.
I would say two things to that. One, that is something that we would research if we decided that we were going to go forward. The second thing is that we essentially have a policy here that we don't waste people's time. Time is money in the professional world, and unless we have the funding and the resources to fund an RFP, I'm not going to put an RFP out on the street, have either 3 or 30 companies spending thousands of dollars creating a response to an RFP if I don't already have the appropriation authority and a cash on hand to fund it. So we don't trial balloon and waste the industry's time. So I think we would do two things. A funding mechanism would need to be, identified. We would certainly take a look at the landscape and see who is out there, so that, in addition to the normal putting it up on our websites, on eMaryland Marketplace, and all the places that we're required to do it, if there are firms out there capable of doing it, we certainly would want to ensure that a copy of it got before them as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, there are no further board questions at this time. We have one card for public comment, as well as anyone else who would like to come up. Lisa Van Buskirk.
Good morning, Board of Education. Lisa Van Busker, we're Start School Leader in Anne Arundel County. As I was trying to keep up with Mr. Shagnovich writing down these 12, 13 different items, they were music to my ears. So I'm very pleased with the work the Transportation Department has come up with in scoping out this. And I look forward to seeing how the discussion goes in 2 weeks and reading it in a bit more detail. So I'm really pleased with where we've come. When 2 years ago, when former board member Ms. Sasso tried to get some outside help to come in, the board was not interested in that. So I'm appreciative of the changes and the effort going forward. So there was a question about my data that I provided. So this is because in the February 6th meeting there had been a discussion about how effective, cost-effective AACPS was. So I looked on MSDE's data, and the most recent data that they have for the selected financial data is from the 2016-2017 school year. And so it is a spreadsheet with 8 tabs, and each tab is 3 pages, so I cut out a lot of stuff, and I can send you the full spreadsheet if you want. But in it, I liked that on tab 4, they evaluated the cost per pupil for each of the 24 jurisdictions and ranked them based on per pupil attending. And in that, Anne Arundel County comes out 15th, so very middle of the pack-ish. It should be interesting to note that the school system that spends the most money also has the best hours. That would be Garrett County. Their elementary is 8:15 to 8:45, and their middle and high schools are 8:25, 8:30. Admittedly, a very rural jurisdiction. They only have 2 high schools, and they're co-located with the middle schools. So it's different, but you know, it's nice to see that some schools do that. Anyways, so when I look at various cost-benefit analysis used by the Brookings Institute and RAND, they estimate that implementing improved start times costs about $150 per person, based on their estimates. The 2014 task force, their numbers came up somewhere in the $110 to $120 range. So we use the $150 until we get the consultants to come back with item number 10, school start time cost estimates and schedules. That would bring Anne Arundel County up to 872, which put us about 11th, right behind Harford County and slightly more than Prince George's County, which I think is fairly consistent with where we would be. And I would like to point out that on Monday, with the time shift, sunrise is going to be at 7:23 now, which means that all of the high school students who are just now being picked up in daylight, next to Civil Dawn, they're all going to be in the dark again. So I'm looking forward to how we can make that evolution safer for all the students. Although now the afternoon late drop-offs will at least be in the light, but we need to improve that for the winter. So thank you very much, and look forward to continued discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you. I just want to ask a question that I don't know that anyone here can answer, but the data on this table provided by Mrs. Van Buskirk, I'm curious, do we know where we rank with other districts as far as, I know that we spend a lot of money transporting students to special schools and out of area. I'm wondering if that affects this ranking at all. Do other school systems do that as much as we do? So in other words, is our cost per pupil perhaps even inflated by that? Do you understand the question? So in other words, and I don't know, we might be doing as the same as other jurisdictions, but I'm wondering if that would affect the ranking at all.
So I haven't looked at that data. I don't know anything about the algorithm for the data that she's given you. I'm seeing it for the first time. So I don't know. I can't answer if non-public transportation costs are included in that algorithm. Right. I don't know. So, secondly, are we out of line or in line, using my words, with other school systems with regard to transporting students to non-publics? I don't know that we are one way or the other different. Larger school districts, statistically speaking, will have more students that will have that need. Smaller school districts won't, but percentage-wise, I think we're right about where the other school systems are.
Okay, any further public comment or board questions and comment on item 4.04? Seeing none, we'll now move to item 5.01, which is just, we don't need to bundle today, just one item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. I'm recommending that the Board of Education award contract number 19SC151, Student Transportation Services for High Road School, Anne Arundel County, to Jubbs Bus Service, Fays Bus Service, Lanes Bus Service, and Lonergan's Charter Service in the total amount of $6,018,069.60. Is
there a motion?
So moved.
Okay, great. Comments, Mrs. Schallheim.
I just have a question. Is High Road School a name of an actual school? Because I don't think it is. Or is it the name of where it is? Oh, all right. I was banging my head against the wall trying to figure out where on earth the school is located. So thank you.
Okay, any other board questions or comments? Any public comments? Seeing none. Mrs. Connolly, this is a vote on item 5.01.
Aye.
Mr. Lod?
Aye.
Miss Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Brannan?
Aye.
Miss Hummer?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Miss Antoine?
Aye.
Miss Urea?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
9-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6.01 is administrative personnel appointments, and today there are none on the docket. Item 6.02 is personnel. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, sir. I recommend board approval of the action stipulated on the attached sheets.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Second, great. Any board comments, questions? Seeing none. Mrs. Connolly, this is now a vote on item 6.02. Please call the roll.
Ms. Shahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lod?
Aye.
Miss Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Brannan?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Miss Hummer?
Aye.
Miss Antoine?
Aye.
Miss Urea?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
9-0, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving along, item 6.03 is part of our third reading calendar today. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. I'm recommending board approval of policy IFG, subject to final correction for style and format.
Any board questions or comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, Mrs. Connolly, policy, I'm so sorry. I'm anxious. We're moving.
I move we adopt.
Any second? Okay, I got your recommendation, just went right into it. I'm so sorry. So, anyway, you see where I'm heading here. We now have Mrs. Connolly, third reading for final vote on health education policy IFG. Would you please call the roll?
Ms. Shahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lod?
Aye.
Miss Ellis?
Aye.
Mr. Brannan?
Aye.
Miss Corkadell?
Aye.
Miss Hummer?
Aye.
Miss Antoine?
Aye.
Miss Urea?
Aye.
Mr. Gilliland?
Aye.
9-0, motion passes.
Thank you. We now have first reading today, which is with item 6.04, ethics and conflict of interest.
Good morning, I think, still. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. The board is bringing policy BAF, ethics and conflict of interest, first reading. This policy was last updated on January 7th, 2015. This is one of the rare instances where you'll find procedures and definitions and in the policy instead of the regulation. This was done intentionally in accordance with requirements established under state law and regulations. The policy has been updated to account for the new composition of the board and to align with recent regulatory revisions by the State Ethics Commission. Revisions include updated definition to the word interest, clarifying language regarding the use of prestige of office by board members or school system officials, inclusion of language regarding financial disclosure requirements for candidates to be members of the board, public records protection of the home address of board members and school officials as it relates to public access to financial disclosure forms. These proposed revisions will be posted on our website for a 30-day public comment period, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I don't see any lights yet, but I just have one question. It's mostly a clarifying question that, not to put you on the spot or even Mrs. Connolly if I dare do so, our next statement is due April 30th of this year, and then if we start to look at the calendar, the changes that may be incorporated here may not, may take effect after some of us submit, you know, for those of us who are early birds and submit on time or well in advance. So the reason I ask is the change this year to, where are we at, under, I guess, page 3, item F, mutual funds and ETFs. We've not had to claim those in the past. And that might be a significant change for some members, at least of the board, and particularly some members of staff. So I guess the question is, if I were to submit my statement tomorrow, I would not, the form's not currently set up for ETFs and mutual funds. Would I then be out of compliance when this takes effect and have to do a second report?
So that's a
Sorry,
great
that was a long-winded question.
No,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you for asking that. That's a great question. I was just perusing that email yesterday myself for the financial disclosures. So the regulation changes by the state have already taken effect. And so while we have not updated our policy to reflect that, this definition is included in the state regulations currently. It's already been updated, so I was waiting for them to finalize their revisions before moving forward with our policy revisions. So not sure if there's a way in the form, if there's additional information that folks, I'm looking over at staff, if there's a way on the form, if the form doesn't currently call for that information, if there is an opportunity to add additional information in the form, then I would highly recommend that the board members and staff include information regarding mutual funds as indicated in the policy, just because the state regulations are already effective. So regardless of whether we've updated our policy, it's what the state requires, and perhaps that's something that we can send an email with this information to highlight that. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. And again, I certainly get the alignment with the state. One of the issues that pops up from time to time is when we say composed primarily of holdings, et cetera, in the specific sector. In some cases we may not know, and that's always a gray area. I tend to side on the side of caution, but at the same time, it makes it difficult sometimes to know, if that one particular ETF or that one particular mutual fund has holdings in, say, an education publishing company or something that may not be given in the name of the mutual fund. So for instance, mutual fund invests in Apple, and Apple has iTunes University and various components where there is overlap in education, but that may not be their primary function. And that offers some gray area. And this was not anything that I intended to talk about at length today, but I'm just raising it to avoid hopefully us not having to do duplicate reports later in the year, and then where there is gray area or ambiguity in the mutual fund because they don't stipulate all of the categories. This kind of woke me up. So
no, that's good information, and I'll definitely coordinate with staff on getting this information out there to board and AACPS staff who are impacted by this policy. And with regards to the state, sometimes they're clearer than other times as far as definitions and things of that nature. Certainly, I would recommend that you err on the side of caution. Of course, as you mentioned, President Gilliland, it's just something you may not know. And so I think, given the fact that this is a recent change, if it was an issue that were to come up, then an individual would have the opportunity to simply amend their disclosure if, unless there was something nefarious that was found, that someone was purposely not disclosing information because of personal gain or something of that nature. You can always go back, and amend it if an issue were to come up. And it's possible that this question may come before the State Ethics Commission, and they may issue an opinion at some time in the future, given the fact that this is a new requirement.
And just in the event of full public disclosure, it's not that I'm hiding anything or insinuating that anybody else may be hiding anything. It's just that in the past, certain holdings in 401ks and IRAs, et cetera, did not have to be disclosed. So this is why this is new for those who've been in the game for a little bit of time here. We've got one question, Mrs. Schallheim.
Thank you for this. I just wanted to know, you said it already took effect at the state level. Do you know when? Because in a similar manner to President Gillen, my ears kind of perked up too a little bit. So like, when did this take effect? Because I am an early bird and I've already submitted my form. So
recently, I would have to go back, definitely within the last 6 months since the school year started. I want to say at the end of 2018 or so.
So because it already went into effect and now it's coming before us, but the form didn't specifically specify some of these things, but obviously now we're held to account. Yeah, I need my form back. So I can make sure I'm cool with this. Yeah, so thank you.
Yeah, and you can amend your form, and that tends to happen. Unfortunately, the state will either pass laws or amend regulations, and then, you know, we have to go through our process to do everything, and so there can be a gap. And so I think that would be easily explainable if there were a question raised as to why certain information was disclosed. Obviously, you filled out your form with the information you had at the time.
Faith, yeah.
And good faith, exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's what's important.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, it looks like we have no other comments here. Any public comment? Seeing none, thank you for that. We'll now move to item 6.05, which is items of legislation. And I know Mrs. Hummer wanted to make a comment at the appropriate time about the Kerwin bill that was introduced. And certainly I know we have no votes expected today on this, but you know, anything else that you'd like to highlight as well?
Sure.
It's kind of, I know Ms. Ortiz can jump in as well. So the long-awaited Kerwin bill finally dropped yesterday, and we were able to get the text. There's a lot of very good things in there that we have been advocating for. Pre-kindergarten funding is huge. Extra support for some of our struggling learners, extra concentrated poverty grants, increased teacher salaries. There's a lot of things. There's some details in there that are still being worked out and being fuzzy, but I think overall it's what we were hoping for. The funds that they initially have in the outline are very good for Anne Arundel County. If those funds are granted. And so I will be going this afternoon. They're fast-tracking it along. Oh, yes. And I will be there going straight from here this afternoon to go testify before the Senate committee for that, and the House committee is next week. So they're moving it right along. But I think overall it's very positive. Ms. Ortiz, you can add into that.
Thank you, Mrs. Hummer. Yes. So yes, the long-awaited Kerwin bill dropped yesterday and the bill hearings today. So we had less than 24 hours. And just a huge thank you to staff, because I sent them the link and I'm like, and I need it by the end of the business day so that I can work on some testimonies. So still working on that so that we can get something on time. So Kerwin would be a Section 3 bill. Everything, as Ms. Hummer stated, are things that we've been monitoring, are covered by the legislative program. We talk about Kerwin Commission specifically. The pre-K funding, we talk about pre-K funding and full funding, per pupil funding for pre-K students in our legislative program, and funding funding in general. We talk about, teachers and teacher salaries and rigorous trainings. So given that, it would be, something that falls under the legislative program. So what we're looking at based on the legislation, which really there weren't surprises necessarily, given that they issued their recommendations not too long ago, would be a support with amendments to just address some concerns. One specific issue in the bill as drafted is the definition of teacher. It excludes individuals that currently are in the same collective bargaining unit as teachers at AACPS. So, for example, curriculum specialists, school psychologists would not be included in that definition, and I understand that there's a general concern about that amongst stakeholders. A couple of other things are accountability. There's an accountability piece in there, and so we would like to ask the legislature to consider doing whatever performance evaluations or audits aligned with the current audits by the Office of Legislative Audits, because this performance evaluation would fall under that office. So rather than doing two separate audits that be done in concert with what we currently have. The last time we had auditors here from OLA, they were here for 11 months. And so, to have back-to-back, and I can't even imagine the small rural counties. Just trying to see if there's other. And then with the teacher preparation program that's proposed in the bill, that's great, wonderful, we support it. We would ask that there's also allowed a little bit of flexibilities to local school systems, because we feel that we're doing things that work here in Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and so we wouldn't want to kind of mess that up. So if we can do it, in concert with what the state is proposing, of course, we would love that. And that's pretty much sort of the clarifications that we would request in the bill, and aligned with our legislative program and positions on these issues this session and in previous sessions.
Awesome. Mr. Ortiz, thank you again for everything. We've got two lights. Mrs. Schalheim.
Thanks for all that. I have some questions about, well, I've one question about one of the bills in our packet, SB 879. It's off. I know we don't have a position on it, but it's awfully specific with regard to just two historical figures. Like, do they go beyond that? Do they talk any about, current contributions or anything like that? Or is this taken right from the text, and that's the whole?
This is right from the text, and that's a good question. And so typically we would oppose curriculum mandates.
Right.
However, given some of the things, the efforts that we're taking here with in our school system, global community citizenship course, and other measures to address diversity and some issues we faced as a county and as a school system, we weren't comfortable opposing it, and especially given the fact that it wasn't very prescriptive, the language, necessarily, other than to talk about highlighting Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. And the reason for that is because they are Marylanders. They were Marylanders, and so that's sort of the highlight. I did ask for clarification, though, on the bill, because it's drafted to a section of law currently which highlights specific days. Yeah. So Veterans Day, Washington's birthday, Lincoln's birthday, Arbor Day. This talks about Black History Month. So the question I posed to the committee was the intention of the bill that school systems devote a part of one day during Black History Month to Black history, and also Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass, which we are already exceeding that in our school system? Or is the intention of the bill that we devote part of one day each day during Black History Month, which would be more difficult to do? It doesn't tell us how we're supposed to do it, what the instruction is supposed to be, so we just asked for that clarification. So I think that was sort of the reason why Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass are highlighted, is just because they were Marylanders.
I would just hope that it would go well beyond that. I mean, I know we probably already do this, so
yes,
this is just more
do.
of a comment. Like, I hope it goes. I hope what we do goes well beyond that. I hope it includes current contributions to society, as well as historical references to amazing people from our past, and the whole spectrum to really celebrate. So it's more of a comment. My question is about Kerwin and pre-K. Mm-hmm. So it's great to, I mean, the state's going to do what it's going to do, and we're hopefully going to be in alignment with that. But, it goes beyond just snapping our fingers and say, okay, universal pre-K, because, like, where do we put all these children? We have overcrowded schools as it is. So do you have any sense on to how they envision this to work, and who it would cover? Because I'm also personally not my kiddo was still napping for many hours a day at that age, and so like the concept of full day standardization of toddlers is a little scary. So can you speak more about what their plan is and implementation and what that all looks like, if you know it?
So I don't know if Ms. Hummer wants to chime in, but so the bill wasn't super specific as to implementation. So the goal of Kerwin was to get a bill this year to address some of the 5 key policy areas that the Commission has been reviewing for the last year. Early childhood development and education is one of them. And so they talk about, expanded per pupil funding for eligible students for pre-K. Next session is when we really anticipate the Commission really looking at, if they're going to expand universal pre-K, how that would be done, how it would be funded, how it would be implemented, and the requirements. They haven't gotten really that detailed in this bill. And so I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. Part of this legislation actually extends the Commission for yet another year. It was originally only supposed to meet for 1 year, and we're going into year 3 here. And next session, the goal is to have legislation that really tackles the funding formulas, because those are not addressed in this legislation. While there's certain funding that's appropriated or allocated for certain grants and certain programs and things of that nature, the actual true funding formulas and the state contribution, and local contributions have not been determined at this time. And during the press conference yesterday, leadership talked about needing local buy-in, for example, right? Because there will definitely be more commitment needed from the local governments to be able to fund this very bold steps that the Commission is looking to move forward with.
So I realize that they're going to expand pre-K. I guess my concern is if they're going to demand that as every child going, or if they don't, how do we, I guess I'm just concerned, how do we scale it, not knowing, if all kids aren't mandated to go, that's great. I think that would fall under our legislative program, not having another demand placed on us. But then if it's not demanded, then how do we gauge where we're going to need space and buildings throughout the county? So I just wanted to put that
No, those are good questions, and that's sort of the issues that we have raised over the years, because space, facility, we're still dealing with the full kindergarten and,
right.
11 years later, and meeting those needs for facilities. There's definitely conversations about collaborating with private pre-K providers and being able to meet the needs. But again, those details have not been worked out as of yet. But certainly they're getting a lot of feedback and information, not only from the Commission members, but from school systems, MAPE, PSAM, superintendents, other stakeholders, parents, et cetera, the legislature, because there are different ideas about that. And certainly there are folks that, don't believe that mandatory full pre-K should be what we're doing. And certainly as a state right now, we allow parents to keep their child back 1 year, even for kindergarten. So I imagine those are all of the things that would be considered when they finally make their final recommendations.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Antoine and then Ms. Hummer.
So I want to commend you, Ms. Hummer, and you, Ms. Ortiz. I know that having it drop like literally yesterday or so, to have this much information come back to us. And I want to share with you, Julie, I didn't know you were testifying today. I would be right there to support you this afternoon if I had known. So if you guys go into these testimonies, we're one team, one fight. Let us know so we can be there to support you.
Well, I will say that literally we found out yesterday, but I'm not going actually to testify on behalf of this board. I'm testifying on behalf of the Maryland Association of Boards of Education.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm there in my role as the legislative chairman. So I'm speaking for all 24 jurisdictions when I go. But on this issue, we very much align with Anne Arundel County Board of Education. But we literally found out yesterday about when this bill about what time all the hearings were going to be. This has been a very fast-moving 24 hours about yes. as the things were finalized.
Yeah.
So then my question, I have two actually. One was back to, you said the definition of teachers in the current commission is different from what it was before, or just different from what we define it as? And if so, how do we look into aligning our definition with currents, because I don't anticipate them changing much.
So what the Kerwin, and they're sneaky, man, because they put it in a special section. So for those that aren't familiar with reading bills, it's usually the all caps bold is the new language, right? And anything that's in regular font is existing language. But when it's in a special section, it's not existing language. It is new language, but it looks like it's existing language, so people will not even pay attention. Sometimes we pay attention to all of those things. So in a special section is where they throw in the definition of teacher, which is interesting because it's uncodified. Things are in special sections are not codified in the law. And so I know that I'm not sure why teacher was limited in its scope for definition. We would not want to adopt the Kerwin definition because that would exclude so many of our employees that we currently include in the same collective bargaining unit. It is my understanding that MSCA, this was not their request either, MABE, PZAM, and others, and so we're just curious as to where this came from, but I don't believe that this a proposed definition has the support of the major stakeholders. And so the goal would be to get that definition changed to be inclusive.
That's part of, that was my B to the A, right? So I'm glad you answered that. So then my other, if we can address the other legislation, okay. So on page 5, the HB 1211, when we talk about Ready, Set, Launch, and they're offering that there be an option for students to take an online course for language, I wanted to better understand why we're choosing to oppose what's being offered here. 5. It's Hotel Bravo 1211.
Okay, so this is with the foreign language requirement, computer programming language courses. And so this is in alignment with our legislative program. First and foremost, we firmly believe that curriculum decisions are the purview of the local boards of education and the State Board of Education, Maryland State Department of Education, as opposed to the legislators. But to have a computer programming course be considered a foreign language requirement, meet a foreign language requirement, we don't feel would meet the purposes of a foreign language requirement and would really dilute the purpose or the reasoning for having world and classical languages or foreign languages. So this is a position that we've been taking historically over the years. This bill is what we call a reintroduction. It's like a perennial bill trying to change whether it's, foreign language requirements or science requirements, and so we've historically always opposed these because the purposes of world and classical languages and computer programming we don't feel are aligned.
And if I could add to that, Ms. Antoine, I think it's a wonderful question, and we've talked lots about it with staff and superintendents around the state, that our opposition to it, our recommending the board's opposition to this, is not in any way, shape, or form making a statement that we believe one is better than the other. We just don't think they should take the place of, right? I think students should have access to computer programming and computer science, and I think they should have access, we believe they should have access to foreign language. What you learn in each is very different. While you call them a programming language, there are things that you get in that world classical language course that you wouldn't get in a computer language course. So we are emphasizing that we want students to take both. Also understand that if this goes through with the state of Maryland, it would not align in many cases with colleges and universities and what they're looking for on college applications of 2 or more years. It's very standard. I was out visiting colleges 2 weeks ago with my daughter and talking to admission counselors in several states and several different universities. They're looking for a minimum of 2, if not 4 years of a language, and they would not accept computer programming as one of those years accounting for a language. So it would sort of put us in a different place in the state of Maryland as we're looking at our students to start to apply to schools around the country. But really it's about access to academics and the rigor of what's in computer science and what's in foreign language, and not one substituting for the other. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mrs. Hummer.
I'm just going to hop back for just 1 minute to Kerwin. The issue about the teacher definition, as Ms. Ortiz said, I believe that there is kind of universal puzzlement about that definitions that's there, and I think that legislators are already hearing from a number of people. As the bill was just dropped yesterday, there's going to be lots of changes to it, and they're already hearing from a lot of people, so I don't think anything is too set in stone on that, and I think that is one issue in particular. I know that all the major education education associations have already raised concerns about the limitations on that. And then when it comes to pre-K, again, there's nothing in this bill, thankfully this year, that's mandating any pre-K whatsoever. This is completely a funding issue in this year's bill. So it would just give us additional funds for the current students that we serve in pre-K. Next year and the years coming up, that'll be when we're really going to get into fine details, and that we'll go back and forth with everything that was raised here. Is it the best for all students? Should it be more targeted? Do we even have the space to do it? Which at many of our schools we don't even have room to add additions to do it. It's not that we could. So those are all things that will come out in the coming years. But the bill today, the bill that dropped yesterday, is really only funding, which was our main focus that we wanted this year, is that we are serving almost 3,000 pre-K students and receiving no additional dollars for them. So this is really good in that if this part of it passes, we will receive more money to serve the existing students that we have.
A little bit of fiscal note staging by the sponsor. Ms. Urea.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. So I had a question on page 6, House Bill 1242, opposing the Vision Services and Vision for Maryland program. From my understanding, I thought we already gave eye exams to students, like on certain periods of the year.
So we do. This would, though, require a County Board of Education to be responsible for coordinating with this vision program that's established under the bill to get the glasses to the students. And currently, we just didn't feel it's the county board's role to do that. Our health departments are staffed by the county health department, and they conduct our vision screenings. And we didn't make a recommendation one way or another, but we just didn't feel that it's a role. It was the purview of a county board of education to be trying to figure out, how to get these glasses to the students at the school. And so we thought there could be another avenue that would be more appropriate and more efficient to ensure that the students were receiving the glasses once once it was determined that they needed them.
So we work with the Department of Health, and it's asking us to work with an additional program, is what you're saying, too?
Yeah, so this would create a new program that would help fund for the glasses for these students, but it's asking us to be responsible for getting the glasses to the students and coordinate. And we just thought, we're not currently providing the vision services directly as a school system as it is. That's the county health department. And so we just thought that whether it's the county health department or whether it's someone at staff at the program itself that would be responsible to provide those glasses to students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Looks like we have no further questions or comments here. Is there any public comment on items of legislation? Seeing none. Ms. Ortiz, thank you, as always. We'll now move to review items. Item 7.01 is the workforce diversity presentation, and we do have a staff presentation. By the way, thank you for this. I've been asking for that.
Good afternoon, President Gilliland, Vice President Urea, and members of the board. I am Jessica Cutchis, Executive Director of Human Resources. To my left is Mrs. Sue Chittum, Senior Manager for Human Capital, and to her left is Mrs. Shanika McKenzie, our Workforce Diversity Specialist. I'm excited to sit before you today and share a review of the 2018-19 hiring season. During this presentation, we will provide an update on both the recruitment and retention of educators in our school system. AACPS continues to strive to build a workforce that is reflective of the students we serve. As we have shared in the past, this is no easy task and many challenges remain. The number of college students pursuing teaching as a major continues to decline. A report by the United States Department of Education found that a mere 8% of college students pursue teaching as a major. The percentage of diverse college students pursuing teaching as a major is even lower at 4%. According to 2017 data released by the National Center of Educational Statistics, the teacher workforce remains overwhelmingly homogeneous, with 80% of public school educators identifying as Caucasian. The percentage of African American teachers nationally has dropped from 8% to 7% of all teachers, while the percentage of Hispanic teachers has risen to 9% of all teachers. Finally, only 76% of African American college students who pursue education as a major actually go into teaching as a career, versus 95% for Caucasian students. Despite these challenges, we remain steadfast in our goals, and we continue to look for innovative ways to tackle these issues. We continue to make progress in our goals to increase the diversity of our teacher workforce, and we'll share some of those successes with you today. As of October 8th, 2018, we hired 679 Unit 1 employees for teaching positions, and this is an 18% increase in the number of teachers hired versus that same time last year. It is also worth noting that 18 were AACPS employees working in other capacities who became certified teachers. 56 of our new hires completed their student teaching internships with the Anne Arundel County Public Schools, and 155 of our new hires, approximately 22%, were graduates of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. As we continue to value diversity and recognize the enrichment and benefits diversity brings to our students' educational experiences, we are excited to report that 23.71% of our new teachers were diverse and 20% were male as of October 8th. The increase in diverse educators represents a 1 percentage point increase over last year's all-time high of 22.6% and more than 2.5 percentage point increase in the number of male educators hired. In addition to our successful recruitment season, in May of 2018, Anne Arundel County Public Schools was selected as the recipient of the James W. Rouse Excellence in Diversity Award in the category of Education Employer. During the awards presentation, several of our diversity initiatives were highlighted along with other winning organizations. Now that I was able to share some highlights, I will turn the presentation over to Mrs. Shanika McKenzie, who will discuss some of the efforts that contributed to our recruitment success this past hiring season.
Good morning. AACPS recruitment staff attended 38 college and teacher education job events during the 2018-2019 recruitment season. 25% of the events attended were diversity-focused job fairs or visits to colleges and universities with higher proportions of students from underrepresented groups. We are continuing to evaluate additional recruitment opportunities with more diverse colleges and universities, including historically Black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs. To help cultivate additional relationships with additional HBCUs, I will be attending the Dream Deferred Conference later this month, which brings together HBCU leaders from across the country. We extended 136 open contracts to strong candidates in order to secure their employment with our district. We especially focused on top diverse applicants and high-performing student interns. 98 of the candidates we offered open contracts accepted positions with AACPS, which is 72% of total offers. 40% of the teacher candidates who accepted open contracts were diverse applicants. As the teacher shortage continues to worsen, the use of open contracts will prove crucial in attracting high-quality, diverse applicants who are sought after by multiple school systems. In addition, HR representatives proactively reached out to principals to help identify highly qualified student interns and offer open contracts. Our HR recruiters are also scheduling on-site visits at student internship work sites in an effort to build relationships with interns, answer questions, and provide guidance regarding the hiring process. With the assistance of dedicated staff in the Office of Workforce Diversity, we contacted nearly 850 diverse teacher applicants applying to teaching positions within our district. During these communications, candidates were informed of missing information in their profile, scheduled for interviews, and encouraged to attend teacher recruitment events. On March 3, 2018, AACPS hosted our Teacher Diversity Job Fair. Held at Severna Park High School, the event was attended by over 170 applicants and representatives from a majority of AACPS schools. Teachers eligible to attend our Diversity Job Fair must fall into one of the following three categories: professionally certified educators from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups, male educators professionally certified in elementary or early childhood education, educators of all races in hard-to-fill areas such as mathematics, chemistry, physics, technology education, special education, and world and classical languages. 90 of the candidates who attended our job fair were ultimately hired, and roughly 40% of those hired were diverse applicants. On our 2019 Diversity Job Fair will once again be held at Severna Park High School on Saturday, April 6th. In March of 2018, Anne Arundel County Public Schools returned to San Juan, Puerto Rico to host our second recruitment event. Nearly 50 teacher applicants were interviewed during the two-day event, and several male educators were ultimately hired for positions within AACPS high-needs schools. AACPS hosted our third teacher hiring event in Puerto Rico in January of 2019. Over 40 candidates were interviewed during this recruitment event, and 12 candidates were extended early offers of employment. As of today, 11 of these candidates have accepted our offers and will be joining us next year. We are also developing relationships with colleges and universities in Puerto Rico. During our recent recruitment trip, AACPS met with representatives from the University of Puerto Rico and Pontifical Catholic University in order to share information regarding opportunities within our district with pending graduates and alumni. During the summer of 2018, AACPS hosted 2 diversity networking events for candidates who completed the application process and were eligible to be hired by our schools. Candidates were able to mingle with principals that had current vacancies during the 2 one-hour meet and greet events. Nearly 60 candidates and over 30 schools participated in these 2 events. Ultimately, 13 candidates were hired. In order to ensure that our job opportunities reach a diverse audience, AACPS has partnered with Diversity in Education, which is an online education job board focused on diversity. All external AACPS teaching positions are pulled directly to this site. In our continued effort to harness the power of social media, we have decided to focus on building our following on Twitter. Our AACPS jobs page provides job-related information, relevant content such as professional development tips, and enhanced engagement with partner colleges and universities. We continue to provide job-related content on the school system's Facebook page, such as information on upcoming job fairs and announcements for hard-to-fill job openings. Finally, we continue to host recruitment events designed to attract career changers or others who may wish to consider teaching as a career. On November 29, 2018, we once again hosted our So You Think You Can Teach information session. The workshop provides attendees with an opportunity to learn more about the process for obtaining teaching certification in Maryland, as well as alternative certification programs offered by AACPS. Attendees were also encouraged to consider substitute teaching as a way to gain valuable classroom experience. This workshop was attended by over 100 individuals, of which approximately 40% were diverse. I will now turn the presentation over to Ms. Sue Chittum to share information regarding turnover and teacher retention.
Good afternoon. While our recruitment team utilizes numerous strategies to hire the best employees, we must do equally as much to keep them in our district. We are all aware of the challenges that face school districts when it comes to retaining teachers. This challenge is even greater when you consider the smaller numbers of diverse educators within our system and their high demand in all areas. At the end of the 2017-2018 school year, teacher turnover remained at 9%. A review of data for that same school year shows that Anne Arundel County Public Schools retained nearly 76% of diverse professionally certified educators for a second year. This represents a decrease in the retention of diverse professionally certified educators from the previous year, when retention was roughly 85%. Factors that affected teacher retention include teachers who were separated by principal non-renewal, teachers who resigned for personal reasons, and teachers who resigned to teach in other districts. We continue to evaluate ways to provide additional support to teachers who may require further professional development or who may be struggling with issues pertaining to work-life balance. The retention rate for non-diverse professionally certified educators was 88% at the end of 2017-2018, which was up slightly from 85% during the previous year. Factors that affected teacher retention for non-diverse educators were similar to those provided for diverse educators. It is also important to note that although a larger number of non-diverse educators separated from Anne Arundel County Public Schools, their overall retention remains higher given the fact that they are hired at more than 3 times the rate of diverse educators. The retention of diverse and non-diverse conditionally certified educators for 2017-2018 school year was 56% and 62.5% respectively. These numbers represent a decrease in retention from the previous year, when conditional retention was 62% and 73% respectively. Conditionally certified teachers in many cases will have less classroom experience and may not have benefited from a student teaching experience prior to stepping into a classroom as the full-time teacher. These teachers are also less likely to be familiar with the educational terminology used frequently in schools. There are several reasons that could account for the lower retention of conditional teachers, including principals' ability to find fully certified candidates, candidates' decision that teaching is not their career of choice, and candidates' failure to maintain requirements to continue on a conditional certificate. There are numerous strategies that Anne Arundel County Public Schools has developed to attempt to improve employee retention across all levels. The new AACPS strategic plan adopted by the board includes an intentional focus on building relationships, which we believe is essential in helping to improve retention. In addition, AACPS has built in 4 critical early release days where school staff receive professional development on various topics, including a required training on implicit bias. We are striving to support the diverse educators within our county in a number of ways. We continue to host networking events to provide our diverse educators with an opportunity to connect with colleagues outside of the classroom. These networking events are a great way for our newer teachers to form relationships with other educators from across the county. The Office of Workforce Diversity has hosted 2 networking events so far during the 2018-19 school year. Over 100 teachers have attended these events. In an effort to provide additional support to recently hired diverse educators, we have established a year-long professional development program. The LEADS program, which stands for Linking Educators to Ensure Development and Success, was created by the Office of Workforce Diversity to provide mentoring and support to diverse educators. The LEADS Professional Development Series was established this school year and provides quarterly professional development workshops for diverse educators new to our school system. Funded through a grant, these paid professional development sessions provide teachers with an opportunity to gain valuable information to help navigate their first year with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Connect with diverse educators from across the county, reflect on their personal experiences in our schools, and discuss the importance of diversity and inclusion within our county. Approximately 25 teachers have attended our first 2 professional development workshops. In addition to the support offered by Right Start Advisors, we continue to host workshops for our conditionally certificated educators to help better acclimate them to the classroom. These workshops provide additional assistance to teachers who most likely did not complete a teacher education program and may be stepping into the classroom for the first time. These voluntary sessions include rotating workshops on topics such as classroom management, planning for instruction, and parent communication. These workshops were moved to evening sessions to alleviate the need for substitutes to cover teacher absences. This year's workshop was held in December and was attended by approximately 40 teachers. Our goal today has been to provide you with some strategies Anne Arundel County Public Schools use to recruit and retain our employees. We realize that people are our most important asset, and that employing individuals with various backgrounds, talents, skills, and perspectives will enhance creativity and innovation within our school communities. Our efforts to increase diversity within our system helps to ensure that every student can see themselves in the teachers and staff members they interact with every day. Studies have shown that positive exposure to individuals from various races and ethnic groups, especially in childhood, can reduce stereotypes, diminish unconscious implicit biases, and promote cross-cultural social bonding. We continue to strive to build a culture where diversity is embraced and all employees feel welcome. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Antoine.
Thank you for this presentation. It was incredible, and the breakout helps me as a decision maker to better understand your efforts from your point of view. And I had a couple of questions. One was about the first year teacher. Many of the schools I can speak for in District 1 at least are considered challenged schools, and that first year can be really daunting if that is not something you're accustomed to, especially if you're a first year teacher teaching, not just teaching in Anne Arundel County. I was wondering if that time, the engagement for that program, if it is customized for teachers who are being introduced to the challenge schools.
So I want to back up. One thing that we may not have covered, but I want to make sure is really clear. These are things above and beyond what is offered to all first-year teachers. So keep in mind that all first-year teachers have a Right Start advisor through our Professional Growth and Development Office. And so those folks know the schools that they're working with very well, and so hopefully they are addressing the needs that a teacher might have at a particular school. Schools also have something called a beginning teacher liaison, and that is someone to familiarize the person a little bit more with the actual school itself. And then on top of that, I think what we're talking about, some of the LEADS programs and different things, is a little bit more general, but certainly Ms. McKenzie does a great job of just meeting the needs of the person as they come. So if they say they have a particular issue, she's very responsive to ensuring that we're connecting that teacher with the right resources or answering his or her question and going from there.
Wonderful, and that answered my question, especially with us recruiting out, in our own territory, of course, but culturally it would certainly be different coming into this system. So that was good to know. So then my second question is a real general question, but I don't understand an open contract. Could you help me to better understand that, please?
Sure. An open offer or an open contract is initially an offer to a candidate that we may have met on a recruitment trip, saying that we want to extend them a position within Anne Arundel County Public Schools for the upcoming school year, but we do not have the specific school they're going to be working at yet. So we are initially promising them or guaranteeing them a position for the upcoming school year, provided that they meet certain criteria. So anytime you are receive an open contract, there is a number of stipulations for things that you must meet. You must apply online. You must prove that you are able to obtain a teaching certificate in the state of Maryland. You must have positive references. If you're able to meet all those stipulations, we are then guaranteeing you a position within the county. And it is a system that most of the districts within Maryland are using to try to attract really strong candidates early.
So then are they given like some timeline or?
So the timeline, with an open offer, at some point the teacher must be placed within a school. Our recruiters work very closely with teachers. Teachers that have open contracts are coded in our applicant tracking system, so principals can know these are really high-flying teachers that we encourage you interview first. And we want that teacher and those principals to make a mutual match. And so our goal is from the time they get hired and their applications are cleared, we can then move them into the system into a status of application complete. As an open contract, principals can see them. As principals begin to have openings or find out about vacancies, they're going to start reviewing that list, and they may contact those teachers for openings. We want those teachers to be placed within, I believe, July 1st is the date. Our goal is to make sure all of our open contracts are placed or with the school by July 1st. If not, we're going to place them at a school because we have promised them a position. We must make sure that they have one before the beginning of the next school year.
Wonderful. And then finally, back to retention. I want to better understand some of the subcategories that encourage moving to other districts. Personal reasons, people don't maybe not divulge that, but are there some key subcategories that may be encouraging leaving for other districts that you have seen or are aware of?
So we have the data, and it just simply, when they choose it, they just tell us they're leaving for another Maryland school district. That's all they put on there. So I can't give any sort of data related to that, but anecdotally, you know, a lot of people take positions the first time right out of college where they get a position. Then their living situation may change. They, you know, are moving somewhere else, or they're moving back home with family, or different things like that. We're also, in some ways, transient in that having a lot of military affiliations in our county with the Naval Academy and with Meade. We often have military spouses, so, you know, they may leave for different, you know, another Maryland county or out of state.
Some of the data that we do have an exit survey in Anne Arundel County. It is anonymous, but it is given to all teachers. So data from the most recent exit survey that would include teachers that most recently left us, top 5 reasons for leaving separation from the county would be personal reasons unrelated to AACP as child care, moving, relocation, compensation or pay, principal or supervisor, work hours, work demands or expectations, or school district policies and practices. Those would be the top 5 that we have seen, and those have pretty much remained in one way, shape, or form the top 5 reasons for the last few years.
So of that top 5, then it sounds like there are some things that we could over time work on to change some of that dynamic in terms of retention. That's a yes coming from one of the board members. I'm looking at areas that we could influence to support change in retention. So thank you.
Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation and for what you're doing in this area. I have a couple questions. So if I got this information correctly, you mentioned a statistic that 76% of African American teaching majors go on to become teachers. Is that what? Did yes. I hear that correct?
76% of African American college students who pursue education as a major. So I'm
right
in college.
So
yes.
I'm aware that, and this is very much available in the literature, that there's a graduation gap at universities and colleges where minorities less frequently make it all the way through to get their degree. So do you know if that accounts for the discrepancy, or are we talking about majors who then change their major or go on to do some other career? Do you know if
I don't know what goes into that 76%.
No.
Yeah.
These are mostly reports from like the U.S. Department of Education,
okay.
So they don't necessarily break down.
So if this matches with that graduation gap, that's what I'm wondering is if we can capture minority education majors and offer them some sort of mentorship, because there's, I guess, challenges, hardships, that barriers that create this gap that maybe if they just had someone supporting them, counseling them through their college career, we might have more success. It's just an idea.
Thank you.
You just mentioned one of the top 5 reasons indicated that teachers are leaving is policies and practices. Do you get any, is there comment section? Do you get any elaboration on that? Is there something, can we start identifying what their concerns are there?
I think that's as far as the data that we have.
Right, so in terms of numbers and data, I understand you collect that as a category, but is there a comment section? Can we start looking into that?
Yes.
I think that'd be great. And then finally, I want to address, I don't know if this falls into the category of the conditional certificate, but I want to address career changers because I've had several people come to me with stories of professionals that could be really valuable to us, physicists, mathematicians, who have been very frustrated because they are interested in a career change. They are interested in getting in the classroom, and boy, they could bring a lot to our school system, but they cannot afford to take a gap in their career. So they cannot afford to follow stepping stones in order to get into the classroom. They need to move from their career into the classroom. So I've been told of several people who have come to AACPS with that interest, and they're not looked at because they don't have any sort of teaching background or certificate. So can you speak to that?
I'll certainly jump in real quick, and certainly the team will speak much more eloquently than I. We are always talking to sort of second career changers, but they have to be certified teachers. So Anne Arundel County doesn't determine how to certify a teacher in the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland does. Okay. And so we've got to follow those processes and rules and regulations to get somebody through that process. We've talked to the legislature about creating ways that we could have adjunct teachers, much like adjunct professors, and work with legislation to see if we can get, we haven't gotten there yet with the legislature. It's on its sort of moving that direction, it's on its way. So, but we are, but there are certain, again, rules and regulations about getting somebody certified to be in front of children.
So you can you help us understand what this conditional certificate is, and what's the process there?
Sure. So a conditional certificate is, without knowing the specifics of the people that you were talking to, and we would love, in HR, I'm like, we always want to talk to people, so send them our way and we will, hold hands and figure out how, if they wanted to pursue something that would work. But essentially, Dr. Arlotto's right, they have to have a certificate. The conditional certificate does allow some career changers to come in, but they have to be in some sort of program and show that they are working toward. It's a 2-year contract only, can be renewed for 2 years, but at that point you need to be on a professional certificate. So we don't consider that a professional certificate. So there are opportunities, but it is a very detailed credit review of what is on that person's transcript and what we can qualify for one way or another. If I may add, very, very proud of the efforts of Anne Arundel County Public Schools in being on the forefront of the adjunct professor bill. With the partnership of Mary Talar and Dr. McMahon and Human Resources and Policy and Legislative Office, we took a bill several years back that just recently was written into COMAR, and so that we can now do the adjunct instructor route. And so that was a brainchild of this Board of Education, and it just recently went into the Maryland Register and COMAR, and so we've been working with Mrs. Talar very closely to figure out how to best implement that. So one option for someone who maybe doesn't want to completely change their career but is interested in teaching a class or two in one of our schools is that adjunct route. Now there are professional development requirements along with that.
Sure.
Because something doesn't mean you can necessarily relate to children.
So could that be a stepping stone for someone who actually wants to make that career change?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's something that we really want to look at is, one, people that just want to step their foot in and see if this is, for them, and then talk to them about how they could eventually become a teacher. So that is all part of the planning that we've been doing with Mrs. Talar's office.
And when did this become effective?
It just went into COMAR. I sent 2 weeks ago.
That explains it, because I've along the campaign trail, I've had people talk to me that were very frustrated that they've been turned away. So
yeah, I mean, it literally just went in 2 weeks ago, probably.
And I want to particularly stress, in our magnets is where we could really use those working professionals. I mean, not to discredit the teaching profession in any way, but there does come a point where students should be able to work with people who are working out in the field, and particularly in our magnets, I think that would be valuable.
Yes,
thanks.
Mrs. Shawheim.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. It's like Ms. Ellis was reading my mind on a bunch of things that she said. So I think the adjunct the adjunct teacher thing is amazing, and please go forth and make that a reality and use that as widely as you can. I think that's fabulous for a route for someone switching careers. I also had the same concern about which policies people were unhappy with, because that's certainly our jam, and like if there's specific things that need evaluation, gosh, I would surely like to know that. And then I just want to applaud your efforts in making Anne Arundel County Public Schools a more diverse place, not just gender and race, but culturally as well. I think that's important. That was kind of where I was trying to go the other day so I know that there's limits to what you can and cannot ask people, but culturally we're a very diverse country. We're certainly a diverse county, and so I would obviously applaud any movement towards that, because it only makes us more rich as a community to have all those different points of view being alive and well and happy in our schools. So thank you for all of your efforts.
Mr. Rea.
Yes, thank you so much for your efforts. I just had one question. So you talked about like workforce diversity and everything, of course. So I was just wondering the placement of teachers to ensure that the place that they are placed at is diverse as well with the teacher workforce. So could you explain to me how that works a little bit?
Sure. So essentially, as Mrs. McKenzie rightfully stated, it's really a mutual agreement between the principal and the teacher. So teachers choose to go to different schools for a variety of reasons, and what we're finding is teachers are being more selective because the way the market is right now. And so there may be a teacher that says, I want to go to a diverse school, I want to work in a Title I school, I want to work, and so it could be teacher self-selection. A principal may be looking to, make sure that his or her staff properly represents the students, and so he may, in interviewing, look for some different, characteristics, or as you said, diversity that are going to come out of the teacher or applicant's answers in their interview questions. But we don't, at this time, move teachers based on any sort of, reason like that. The teachers need to be where they want to be, and the principals need to want them in their buildings.
Okay, so it's mutually decided by principal interview is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Hummer.
Yes, thank you all. This is great. I love seeing numbers going up. That's always nice. Particularly, I want to tell you that I was texting Miss Sasso while you were talking to let her know that y'all you'd had 11 people already from Puerto Rico, because she would be thrilled to know that. Others may not realize this. A couple of years ago, Miss Sasso offered to get in someone's suitcase and go with them to Puerto Rico to recruit. So she will be thrilled to know that her efforts on doing that have really been fruitful, and so glad to hear that. Also, the adjunct professor thing, thank you for sending that. That was Ms. Korbalak previously, and with this board, we've been pushing that for several years, trying to get legislation passed for that, and it was kind of pushed back that we don't need legislation. It can go through the MSDE, and we've been, the staff and the board have been really working on that. So I'm thrilled to hear that that's in place, and that's something we've wanted for a long time. And so I will make sure to message Ms. Korbalak and let her know that all those efforts that she started all those years ago have finally come to fruition. So thank you all so much.
Mrs. Corkadell.
I'll just briefly wrap this conversation up. I just want to thank the staff personally. I had a meeting with them to kind of do a 101 on some of these issues, and I just want to tell Dr. Arlotto that I think definitely a team to be proud of. Not only are they looking at innovative ways, they have their concurrency managers, their matrices all in order, and they are moving us in the right direction. So I just wanted to laud where laud is due.
Thank you. Mr. Light.
Thank you, Mr. President. I can only echo what Ms. Corkadell said. I reached back in my brain cells here to about 1998, 1999, when the Division of Human Resources did the first strategic staffing study. And looking in a lot of the data that now you live with day to day. And the old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Your challenges are amazing, but the innovation that you showed through your presentation today of how you approach it, you've come a long way. There's no doubt about it. And success is borne out. I do have two questions, though. How would you compare teachers in the numbers? I don't know if you have it exact, between teachers we lose to other Maryland school districts versus teachers we gain from other Maryland school districts?
There is the state keeps a fact book that's updated every 2 years. That's something the state tracks, right? You can't track how many teachers leave Maryland, go to Iowa, but you can track how many go from one county to the other. And the numbers, and I'm going to make this up, but they hover around 60 leaving us and about 62 or 63 coming to us. That's just sort of a general number. We typically get just a few more coming to us than leave us as a general number. I don't have the fact book in front of me, but over the years, that's the way it's worked. We always have some that go to other counties. We always have some that come to us, and the number that come to us from other counties is always slightly higher.
Thank you. That was my impression as well. I just wanted to get it confirmed. And lastly, what is the status of interstate mutual recognition of certificates? And I bring that from the point of a military spouse who has been teaching in Florida in the Pensacola School District, and her husband or spouse is a naval aviator, and they come here to the Naval Academy, and this individual wants to consider teaching. She has a certificate, he or she has a certificate in Florida. Where are we on the mutual acceptance /
So one of the great things about the state of Maryland is that we have reciprocity with pretty much every state. We have several different routes to certification that we can apply an out-of-state certificate to. So we can look at that person's program and test. We can look at how many years that they've been teaching in their certificate. So we pretty much can accept teaching certificates from virtually every state. I know every state doesn't do that, but that's one of the selling points that we do when we go out and we recruit out of state, is candidates are very happy to hear that they will not have to take additional tests in the state of Maryland to become certified, that their certification has reciprocity.
Thank you.
Mrs. Ellis.
Just real quick, I can't stop thinking about this adjunct professor thing. Is there a way we can blast that? I mean, I'm very excited to hear about this. On our Facebook page, thinking about getting in. Are you a professional who would like to be in the class? Something so people know. Because, like I said, I've had many people have conversations with me. I can't follow up with them. I don't know who they are anymore, but.
I think when the time is right, we would love to do that. I'm not sure we're there yet because there's some professional development components that we need to develop before we can do that, because the regulation is very prescriptive and that we have to have the adjunct instructors doing certain things. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to advertise something prior to us having the infrastructure to really support it. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we do, I am right on board. And I think, also in working with curriculum and instruction and Dr. McMahon and Mrs. Talar, to make sure we're really picking the right classes and really have a good idea, because also, as Mrs. Chittum could speak to better than anyone, the scheduling piece at the high school level is also an issue, because you can't just have a whole bunch of .1 teachers. So there's a little bit of logistics we need to work out, but then we're ready to go after that.
Thank you.
And this is, we are as excited about this as you are, if not more. This is, and Mrs. Hummer alluded to it, this has been an ongoing conversation for us and staff for a number of years. And it comes from, and you talked about STEM programs and our choice programs, it really came from that, where we wanted to have visiting artists and visiting engineers and mathematicians. And so that's where this came from, where we have some specialty classes where somebody might want to come in and teach an engineering class at North County High School, or teach a dance class in the PVA at Broadneck High School, to give examples, and then go back to their real jobs in their real world. And so we have when the time is right, when we have now that it's in through the register and the infrastructure is built to support them based on what the law requires, we really have a ready-made mechanism to communicate with Northrop Grumman and all of these other business partners, because the business partners, the Fort Meade Alliance, they already exist, and we have business advisories for all of our choice programs. So we have the business partners out there. And I think we'll have some that'll really take advantage of this. And we've been talking to, again, this is a conversation we've been going on for years. So as we develop the supports for them, we'll certainly open it up and try and bring them in. We're excited about it.
Okay, no additional lights are here. I just want to echo the thanks, and then also say a special thank you for Chart A2. Having that additional breakout has It's extremely helpful, and I appreciate that. I know, and getting data and then breaking it out even further, that comes with effort and time. But I do appreciate seeing those numbers, so thank you for that. And at this point, any public comment? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We will now move to item 7.02, again, another review item, which is award of contracts. Are there any board questions or comments?
I present a motion to bundle.
Not a vote.
Review then.
Mrs. Hummer.
I have one quick question. The interpreting services, is this for actual people, or is this our interpreting phone line? Sorry, Alex. Give you some more steps on your Fitbit.
You're the one that needs to get out of here. That's why.
It's kind of.
Hearing starts.
Good afternoon, Alex Shekno, Chief Operating Officer. This is for people, human capital. Several meetings ago, the board actually approved a contract for the telephonic link version of it. So we utilize both. Case specific, this is the human capital version.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just clarifying.
Okay, it looks like we have no further questions. Thank you. Again, we almost made the 1 o'clock mark. That was my goal today. For upcoming meetings, the next general board meeting is Wednesday, March 20th, 2019 at 7 p.m. The Policy Committee will meet on Wednesday, March 13th at 1 p.m. The Budget Committee will meet today, 1 hour after the conclusion of this meeting in this room. And then of special note, the redistricting hearing for the Crofton area is on Tuesday, March 19th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the Arundel High School auditorium. Sign up that night will begin at 5:30 p.m. Ms. Urea.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into closed session to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters that relate to the negotiations.
So moved.
All in favor say aye. Opposed no. Thank you.